CN&CO Events proudly brings you InsureTalk Live 2023. The time has come to close your laptop and join us live. Network with industry leaders and influencers. Engage and learn from A-list speakers. Interact with top exhibitors. Experience the best live entertainment. And so much more. Register today. Visit cnandcoevents.com. InsureTalk Live 2023, shaping the future together. Register today.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christelle Coleman, and I have the incredible honor to be your host for today. Today, number 36 of InsureTalk, and today we're coming to you live from Cape Town. It is still cold and wet and windy in Cape Town, so we can't wait for summer and for spring to arrive in the mother city. In the realms of business and in the world, they say that you are the company you keep. And here at InsureTalk, we are incredibly honored to have the most prolific brands from around the world sponsor our monthly conference. And today is no exception. Today we have as a headline sponsor Munich Re, which is the world's largest reinsurance company. And we have a number of the executives who are going to be speakers and share some of their knowledge and expertise in the world of reinsurance, cyber, all other and liability specialist lines, very interesting topics that we have lined up for you today. But I wanted to mention something to you. So of course Munich Re, as we know, is the largest reinsurer in the world. But this past week I saw an article published online by Stefan Golling, who is a member of the main board of Munich Re, and he was talking about the fact that underwriting matters again, and it really struck a chord with me. I want to quote from his article. He says, so for many years, maybe the focus in the industry was on innovation, on disruption, on digital capabilities, on distribution, and they are all really important topics. And they will stay important and in focus in the future as well. But there's also, again, a focus on the basics. And the basics, from my point of view, is the art of underwriting. And I thought that was absolutely amazing to hear that message come through from such an important force of reinsurance in our industry. So our topic for today, as I mentioned, focuses largely around cyber risks and specialist lines. And our first speakers are going to share the stage. We have two speakers from Munich Re, Wolfgang Boffo and Harpreet Singh. They're going to be talking to us on the topics of, Wolfgang's going to give us a refresher on cyber risk and cyber risk insurance. What is it, he says. And Harpreet is going to talk on trends and needs for minimum but effective cyber risk security hygiene. And before I hand over to our speakers, I do know Wolfgang as well. He's a well-known individual in the South African insurance landscape. He's a business development and underwriting manager, cyber risks for Southern Africa. And he's been with Munich Re for more than 13 years, always in positions to provide adequate risk transfer solutions for new types of risks. Throughout his professional career development, cyber risks has been a hot topic despite not even being called cyber risks back then. And Wolfgang is going to join us on the stage shortly to discuss his topic with us, together with Harpreet. Now, Harpreet has been with Munich Re for the last 4 years, also working as a cyber risk expert, but he's based in Singapore. He's more than 15 years of work experience in IT, so not insurance, but IT, performing various roles, including cybersecurity, incident reports, client services, and the e-discovery era. So on that note, I am going to hand you over to our experts, and we look forward to your talk this morning.
Well, good morning to all of you from Munich. I'm here together with Harpreet, as you may have seen when I started to share the video. I'd like to pick up on the quote Christelle has just shared. I saw her liking it on LinkedIn. It really is that we are very serious about the art of underwriting and the capability of all the underwriters that we have. But exactly to my left is Harpreet. And this shows proof that we are very serious about the cyber risk topic, because only an underwriter as such, coming from traditional lines such as property or casualty, actually cannot really assess in full the complexity of cyber risk. This is why we team up in our underwriting teams with IT security experts. This is across the world. We have IT security experts not only in Munich, but in all our hubs and local offices, to jointly assess and adequately price the risk. I'd like to share my presentation just now. So give me a moment without my glasses to get the right one pulled up. All right. I'm going to do a little bit of a refresher. So I'm not going to potentially use all the 30 minutes that I was given. To leave the room for Harpreet to talk about the minimum security requirements and the latest trends that we have seen from a global perspective, but also with an Asian and African influence. We are both happy to ask questions via the chat, and we should have time to address the questions at the end of the presentation. I'm really into refreshing the topic of cyber risk and cyber risk insurance. So why is it important for me to do that? Because we always have the misunderstanding in cyber risk insurance that people sometimes have a different view of what cyber risks are and how to make them insurable. We will also have a little bit of a refresher on the product. And I'll share some stats and statistics, facts from a global survey that we've carried out last year. And in that survey, also South Africa formed part. So in case there is interest to get deeper insights into that presentation, the link to our Munich Re website can easily be shared. Alternatively, it's easy to find on our website. Okay, so please let me share the first thoughts and the first misunderstanding. What are cyber risks? And again, I'd like to make it a note. Now we are talking about cyber risk. We're not talking about cyber risk insurance. So the one misunderstanding we have is that people believe everything that deals with computer or is digital somehow needs to be a cyber risk. But we believe that the cyber risks that we have arise out of the storage, the usage, the computation, and or the transmission of electronic data. The cyber risks we have, they come from cyber risk perils, and these perils are basically coming from digitalization trends and the latest technologies. Munich Re is actually on the topic for quite a while now to do a global risk tech radar. And this radar for the past 5 years actually changed, not significantly, but there's always new stuff that gets on the radar, and there are things that drop off. On the top of everyone's mind is ChatGPT. That is like a trend in artificial intelligence that no one can deny. But if we then go into the cyber risks and what they are forming part of a threat to your own corporation, it is really that the asset and the value creation is heavily depending on the availability of data, of qualified data, and of unmanipulated systems. So having said that, depending on data and systems, potentially everyone can be affected in the personal life, but also every company can easily be affected if data is gone, if data is corrupted, or if systems are not available. This can cause first-party losses and third-party liabilities. And from an insurance perspective, because now I'm trying to slowly but surely get into the insurance part of cyber risk insurance, we are a strong believer that this must not be blended into property or casualty insurance as an add-on. That used to be the case a couple of years back. I'm talking like 7, 8, 10 years. But the insurance industry is actually now really trying to carve out the so-called silent cyber pieces, make it an affirmative cover, and place it as a standalone product in the market. If you hear me talking about the market, then certainly all this has started in the United States, first of all, but I'll have a slide on that in a moment. So allow me to clear misunderstanding number 2. So now we talk about cyber risk insurance, and cyber risk insurance usually is triggered, as we know, by an event. The insured event needs to be defined in the policy. Now I've taken more or less 4 core cover elements that you'll find across the insurance policies out there in the primary market. So you have to have an event that is somehow affecting or is linked to data breach. There can be a third-party claim. It can be certainly cyber extortion. This is something that you can read across the papers actually every day, irrespective of the region you're in, or a cyber incident as such. And what the cyber incident as such is, I'm going to show you in a moment. Let me briefly pull up a definition on data breach. You may read it out yourself, but I did stress and highlight that it is to be on your computer system or on the computer system of a named service provider. So why is it important to stress on your computer system? Goes back to the previous slide. It's not only just because it is somehow with a computer, it needs to be an event that happens to you on your computer system, because from an underwriting perspective, we would like to have every company to be on top of the latest trends in security hygiene to avoid such things to happen on your computer system. If you have services outsourced, then we expect the potential policyholder certainly to apply at least the same controls to such a partner being chosen to handle your data or your systems. On the cyber incident part, it's the same thing. I've highlighted that it needs to be on your computer system. So that can be a virus, that can be a human error, a DDoS attack, that can be that others try to basically take off your website and bombard your website so that you can't be available for others to do shopping on there. It's the theft of data, but again, all needs to have impact on your computer system. With that in mind, I'm pulling up a couple of the usual cover elements on cyber risk insurance. Actually, all such cyber risk insurance policies we would regard to be very comprehensive, and they all come with services attached. So the services are pre-incident, so when you try to bind the policy, but they are in particularly important when it comes to an event, because then you have like post event services being attached to that. In the past, the cyber risk insurance was very often called cyber liability insurance. And you can see that on the right-hand side of the slide. It all talks about liability. So we have network security liability, we have like privacy and data breach liability, and we have media liability. There is the legacy attached to that, that in the past, the easy case was data was gone, a third party is suffering some kind of loss, that third party is approaching you and is making a claim against you because you haven't handled data properly. This is why all this is usually referred to as third-party claims. You may as well say third-party claims causing you losses. There's a lot of regulation out in the world these days. So in South Africa, you are aware about POPI. In Europe, it would be GDPR. There is many other similar regulations, and we see these regulatory authorities collecting fines. I'm aware about the Department of Justice in South Africa that had been fined to pay 5 million rand, which is like half of the maximum fine. because of the hacking incident they suffered last year around September. What is more important to me to highlight is the first-party elements, and these are now displayed on the left-hand side. So if an event happens, an insured event happens, and if data has been either stolen, encrypted, manipulated, so you can't trust that the data is okay. So first of all, you're going to have some kind of business interruption because you can't operate your shop, you can't operate your logistics. As an airline, if you don't have the right information of aviation-related information, you may not be able to take off. And all this is causing you substantial business interruption. So such business interruption elements may be much, much bigger than any kind of media liability that you can imagine. Attached to data being lost or gone, certainly you need to restore data to get you back into business. You may have to inform your clients and your partners. You may face costs and fines. So that's the incident, breach, and response cover. You may have to deal with criminals who have taken the data. So you are threatened with some kind of kidnap and ransom money, so cyber extortion. Potentially money is gone. That also is a cover element that can be thought of. And PCI is a specialized cover element for those who have contractual liabilities with credit card companies in case they need to reissue cards and get to be recertified by the credit card company. So the slide actually nicely displays the right-hand side. That used to be the cover elements. The cyber risk journey has once started. It was more about the liability element. But as it's displayed on the slide, the left-hand side, the 6 elements are actually more important than the right-hand side. All of that is the comprehensive cover that we talk about these days and make up the traditional or regular cyber risk policies. You heard me talking about services. So just imagine an incident happens. You may be in a position that you don't have experts in-house. So if you don't talk about a large bank, an insurance company, or a telco, if you talk about small and medium-sized business, then usually there is an IT department, but not really an IT security expert who can take over in such a situation. So you may want to have a hotline, you want to call a partner, the partners deploy their experts. Forensic work is carried out on your systems. The malware is identified and taken off. Maybe there's a chance to restore data from backups. And the overall target is to get you back into business as soon as possible. So all this is basically available via a comprehensive and state-of-the-art cyber risk cover. I'd like to stress this once again because it's quite a unique element you may know from motor insurance. So if we now picture the lady on the left-hand side, motor insurance usually comes with a service. So if you picture this with the lady on the right-hand side, lady gets to work, a screen pops up and says that there is encrypted information, please pay me some money. The lady can call a hotline, and from the hotline, the lady gets the help that she needs to be back into business. I hope that I've gotten you back into the cyber risk insurance values. And as I know that insurance basically needs to be sold, the big challenge is, or the big question is, so why doesn't it really sell as hotcakes? I promise to give a little bit of a time wrap-up. Cyber risk insurance has started a couple of years back, I would say like 8 years or 10 years back in the United States. So the United States have seen a couple of very, very big hits that got into media. My very preferred and personal example would be Sony PlayStation. That happened just at the end of the year with Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. 70 million set of data was stolen. Many people then haven't bought the Sony PlayStation. Sony had to notify 70 million people. They were not organized. Every set of data, there is various reports, was like $30 to $50 per person as a cost to notify only. And similar events at the time. And then the publicity on these events basically caused the insurance market to get going, got the big brokers going. Some senior executives at the corporates have lost the job. D&O insurers started to not pick up these cyber claims. They said you can actually buy it. So if such cover is out there, please go and buy cyber risk cover, but don't claim against D&O insurance. The challenge at the time has been that, I said that before, that cyber risk was basically added to existing liability products, and it was following the policy structure, program structure, pricing structure, which was not really from a loss perspective. And I go back to the quote of Stefan Golling, our board member. There was hardly any loss experience or data that we were able to use in the market, not Munich Re as such, but in the market for risk adequate pricing. Then suddenly people found out like 5 years ago that this is also about business interruption, first party losses. Then we had the communalization or optimization in the hacking area. So please, in case you have that picture in mind, a hacker is not a one-man show. A hacker these days is like an organization with like 200 people. They have different business units. The business units are specialized in, one gets the data, the next one uses the data to access the system, the next one uses the data to basically encrypt the data, the next one is doing the negotiation, and then there is like a service hotline. If the decryption key doesn't work, you can even like call them and ask for assistance, and need to trust that they are worth the money to pay them. So we strongly believe that the trend is going on. And this is why I would like, again, to point to my left-hand side to Hoprit, because he's going to share a couple of minimum security hygiene tips that every company should actually be following to try to fend off these attempts of criminals. On pricing, you heard me saying that we didn't really have adequate pricing a couple of years back. This is along the timeline of the development of cyber risk rates. So you can see actually, compare that to the previous slide, that for quite a long time, for like 3 years, it was more or less flat. 2020, and especially end of 2020, 4 of the biggest cyber risk carriers in the primary markets, global carriers, they were hit badly. So rates were going up, capacity was cut in half, endorsements were added to the policy, but pricing was pretty much on the rise. So sometimes a primary policy was not doubled, was tripled in terms of policy premium. It has come down a little bit, but we believe that now surely it is like on a stable level, and we would regard this to be risk adequate. At least it shouldn't go down anymore. There's a couple of press clippings that pretty much highlight the development over time. So now cyber cover costs explode and capacity is limited. You heard me just saying that. And we believe that after some 2 years of some kind of flattening and adjusting, the trend is picking up again. But more on that from Hoprit. I wanted to share a short video, which is coming up now. South Africa was also featured in our global survey. Again, the link is available at a fingertip, or you just check on our websites. But please stay tuned for the next 3 minutes. So together with our partners, I think this is very important. Together with our partners is the cedants in the local markets, but it's also the partners that we have on the incident response side, so the IT security experts that you can call via the hotline. We try to bring all this to the local markets. We try to basically build in all the learnings that we have from a global perspective. It's quite a dynamic market because we always have to catch up with what the criminals and the latest technology is going to put us as a challenge in front of our doorstep. So on the video, I wanted to pull up 4 items before I wrap up my presentation, because it really matters. So the question is not if, the question is when will you be hacked, or when are you going to have such an incident? And you should be prepared for that. So the top 3 cybercrime attacks from that survey is basically that the data breaches and the ransomware attacks are still up, and we see this trend to continue in 23 as well. The beauty is that somehow at least the awareness about cyber risk insurance has actually come up. So 10 years ago, it was very difficult to sell. These days, we believe that the awareness has actually come to a point. If you see a third has had a touch point already, which is good. An additional third already considers to potentially buy, that we still manage 25% who haven't heard about it. That should actually then improve as well. The top components, just to reiterate, the business interruption element is really something that matters. Attached to business interruption certainly is restoration, to get you back into business with data being either restored or taken from backups, or systems being cleaned. And which is very close to our heart, is the main root cause for incidents. So yes, that could be soft or weak protocols and processes that can be optimized. That sometimes is outdated software and systems. But the human factor is really something that matters so much on the claim side, that we see if the human factor had been better trained, if there had been more awareness, it would have been so easy to fend off the attempt of the criminal and to avoid an incident. So without further ado, I'm trying now to prepare the stage for Harpreet, the trends in the hygiene, because this is a frame from the video. So it's about implementation of protection. It really is, for me, about the must-haves of insurance, minimum security requirements that we recommend from an insurance department for any corporation out there, especially the small and medium-sized business segment, which I believe is core of the client base anyhow. If there is questions, please put them in the chat and we try to attend to them after the presentation. But for now, I'd like to hand over to Harpreet, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Thank you and good morning all, or good afternoon all, wherever you are. I'm looking at the participation. I'm super excited to present you the topics that I need to present. I've got roughly 30 to 35 minutes where I'll be sort of giving you sort of updates or an awareness into 2 folds. Number 1, what are the top cyber threats? So as Wolfgang was, explaining you more about, how the insurance aspect is from a cyber perspective, my focus in next 30 to 35 minutes will be more on from a technical aspect, converting into an insurance friendly word. What are the top cyber threats that we should be aware of when it comes to doing a proper underwriting? So that's more like a problem statement. And then the second fold would be to then understand what could be the solution that we could recommend the clients or a client should have when it comes to reducing the probability to mitigate the risk that we see. So that's what I will be majorly concentrating in next 30 minutes or so. And again, as Wolfgang said, please post questions if you think there is something you would like to understand a bit more, but I'll try my level best to make it as simple as possible and to make it more sort of easy to understand when it comes to discussing with our clients and potential policyholders and those kind of things. So the slide that you see actually gives you the top 6 cyber threats that are currently there. Now, when it comes to cyber risk or cyber threats, you could open public platforms, public sources, and you will see people talking about so many things, right? So what we've done is, in this slide, we've actually made it quite simple for you to know that these are the top 6 that we currently see from a global perspective, right? And before I sort of go through one by one main or one key message on this slide would be to say that the threats that we see this year remains pretty much the same. However, the evolution of the way these threats are developing, it's becoming and making it quite complex for an organization to protect against and to detect against. And hence, the second fold, like I said earlier, in terms of what could be the solution, would be an important aspect as well to talk about. So let's go through these threats, and I'll try to sort of explain you how they are also evolving further. So the first threat is ransomware. Now, ransomware needs no introduction, right? Ransomware is a typical scenario where an hacker tries to get in the network. He encrypts the data, and then before he could provide you the decryption keys or a key to unlock those systems or the data that he has done, he would demand a ransom. As simple as that, right? However, as I said, the theme that we see is developing, is evolving. And what that means is, with ransomware, the trend that we used to see maybe a few years back was just the encryption, but then since last 2 years, we have seen the encryption is now combined with a data exfiltration. So, and that is called a double extortion, which is what we've shown in the slide to you. And that is a trend we see is currently building up. However, it is further evolving, and it is evolving in form of a straight up extortion. What is a straight up extortion? It means a hacker is able to get in your system, and he doesn't worry about encrypting the system. He directly exfiltrates the data, and then he demands ransom from the victim or the organization. And clearly what you can see is that there is one key message that we are seeing with this evolution, and that is that companies we see are actually getting better when it comes to recovering the data from the backup systems, which is why, if you think from a hacker's perspective, they would not want to waste their resources in encrypting the data. Rather, we see the existing trend is they directly go in to steal the data and then demand the ransom. So that is called a straight up extortion. Now, when it comes to ransomware, and Wolfgang just mentioned, and I just would like to add what Wolfgang just said, is ransomware and the hacker group, it's not an individual group. Now, if you try to understand these evolution and the trend, clearly we need a sophisticated group of people, right? A sophisticated group of people, which is backed up with good amount of funding, and it's a organization. So it's a group of people, it's a smart bunch of people who are trying to actually keep up to the pace of knowing what an organization is trying to do in order to defend themselves. So they are trying to be even more smarter in order to attack you and make it and create a maximum impact of it. So absolutely agree to what Wolfgang said, but to add on, ransomware gangs nowadays is as good as a professional organization. Just like in a professional organization, you have a separate department doing something, exactly how you can correlate or resonate the ransomware gangs. You have you have kind of a people who are recruiting some of the experts who they can put it for a bad purpose, and they are also trying to then attract people by offering them more incentives in order to hire them and get them associated as part of their gang. So that's ransomware for you. If I move on, the next attack is phishing attack. Phishing attack, we all know email phishing is very common. Now, what we have seen in the past and also in the present, that we all, you and I, everybody in this chat room, we all get phishing emails, which are, some of the emails are quite obvious for us to understand that yes, it's an email that I should not click a link on, right? So it's like a social engineering attack that hackers are trying to do in order to get into the network. But what we are seeing that the trend is evolving, and how it is evolving, that nowadays the attackers with an intention of maximizing the impact is not just limiting emails to random people or a certain, random people like Wolfgang, Harpreet, or someone else, but they are targeting an organization staff. So, for example, if they want to target a company ABC, which is a multi-billion-dollar company and has got, let's say, 7,000, 10,000 staff for them, then they will try to sort of get at least half of the organization staff and email. We call it spear phishing campaigns. And spear phishing campaigns is where they target, it's a targeted attack to a specific bunch of people or a group of people in order to maximize the impact. Why do they do that? Now, in a technical world, how it works is if as a hacker, I'm able to get into, let's say, ABC company's network via, multiple staff, then I'm actually having a good foothold in the organization's network, and I can actually go to the root level privileges in order to do maximum impact and to put the pressure on the company and the victim to actually do what I want to do in form of getting the ransom, or I can steal a lot of sensitive data from them. So with phishing, we are seeing a lot of spear phishing campaigns being launched. Then comes malware attack. Malware attack is now what we in past years used to see with malware attacks is, you would have a certain software that is used by a particular organization, and then hacker tries to sort of compromise that malware, and that way he or the hacker group try to compromise that particular organization, right? And that is what we meant by saying discrete malwares that were being targeted. However, with the current trend, we are seeing that it's a cross platforms being targeted. Very, very famous example, we all know, just few months back in June this year, we had some of you might know Move IT, which is one of the very file transfer protocol. It's a software used for transferring file on a secured basis from one particular source to a destination. And this particular software is provided by a vendor called Progress Software, and they give this software to many organizations around the world, right? So what the hackers tried to do, rather than targeting a particular organization, they actually compromised this software that is owned by a Progress software company, and through that, it was actually a perfect example for them to create a cross-platform or target a cross-platform through which they could actually target multiple organizations, not in a particular region, but across the globe in various sections, across various industries. So that is what we are seeing when it comes to malware attacks, where more and more such cross-platform softwares are being targeted. Then comes supply chain attack. Now, this, to me, from a security perspective, is the most interesting and the most tricky threat that we are seeing. Now, typically, what happens in a supply chain attack? That an attacker wants to, let's say, target a multi-billion-dollar company, and let's say it's a financial institution. What we all know, typically a financial institution, which is typically a multi-billion-dollar, they would be quite well organized when it comes to their security controls. But how do I, as a hacker, can get into that network? Because I also know that regulators also mandate that FI with a minimum set of hygiene. So what I would typically do as a hacker is I will try to use a backdoor entry through their associated vendors in order to attack that multi-billion FI, financial institution. And that is a typical example of a supply chain attack. There are so many big incidents that we all know about the supply chain. We all know Kaseya, one of the global software provider. That was a classic example of a supply chain attack. We all know about solar winds that affected global aspect. That was a classic example of a supply chain attack. So supply chain attack, why I said I find it very interesting is because this, if a hacker is successful, they can really create a big impact and a big sort of from a financial motivation perspective, that would be a perfect instrument for them in order to create the maximum financial gains from their side. Now, what we are seeing with supply chain attacks, it's actually evolving. So what we used to see was that open source codes, which was available easily download that could be easily downloaded by companies to then use to their benefits. That was being targeted. Now the evolution is that hackers are trying to access the software repository code of an organization. Now imagine you as an organization have a software repository platform which lists all the softwares, which has all the developer access in it. Imagine I, as a hacker, get an access to that. That would be a perfect platform for me then to use you as a backdoor entry to get to the main organization. And this is where, typically with supply chain attacks, this is where we see a lot of SMEs, small and medium enterprises, are being targeted as a soft target to get to the associated clients or the vendors of theirs, which is the ultimate target for an organization, for a hacker. Then comes cloud attacks. Now, we all know cloud is a beautiful technology. In my view, still a quite new technology comparatively, right? It's just been existing for last few years now. And hence, I feel with cloud, I think there are still certain elements that is still quite niche and quite interesting, which is not completely all the security experts have got a grip of it. And this is where the attackers are making the most advantage. So what we are seeing with cloud attacks is that typically, as an organization, if I'm subscribing to, let's say, a Google Cloud or a Microsoft Azure Cloud or Amazon Web Services Cloud, now I would need to configure me as an organization to connect to the cloud. And most of the time, because of the lack of expertise, the configurations are not very secured. And that then gets exploited by the hackers in order to get into the organization's network. So that is what we were seeing. From an evolution perspective, now we are seeing the APIs, which is application programming interface. In a very simple terms, it's a connection that you make as an organization to the cloud vendor. So you make a connection via an API interface, and this API needs to be patched regularly. If you don't do that, then that vulnerability or that exploit can be easily targeted by the hackers. And this is what we are seeing with the cloud attacks currently. Finally, the sixth threat is the BEC. It stands for business email compromise. Now, just for those of you who don't know about business email compromise, it's also a very common social engineering attack, slightly different to phishing. The way BEC differs to phishing is that in BEC, it's more like an instruction email. It doesn't present you with a malicious email like what you see in the phishing email. So a BEC is basically an instruction email that generally is sent by compromising senior executives of an organization's email account by a hacker, and then that email is sent from that senior executive's email ID to the employee of that organization to attract them or disguise them to transfer the money into a certain account which is operated by a hacker. And that is why we call it as a CEO fraud, right? Because CEO means your top senior executive. Now it could be CEO, it could be one of the senior officials, It could be even your lawyer, your legal counsel of an organization. It could be even your financial department email address that could be targeted. So with BEC, the hackers are using their email address, and then imagine you get an email from your CEO to say, as an example, we are actually for a charity cause. We would like you to donate as much as you want, and this is the email, this is the bank account you can do it. It looks very legitimate, right? So you would do that, and this is typically what we are seeing happens. And this attack typically we are seeing quite common in Asia Pacific, South African region recently. From an evolution perspective, if you think by creating security awareness, you can educate your staff, actually, that's a good point. However, as a hacker, they are evolving now of bypassing the multi-factor authentication techniques. I mean, I don't want to get into too much technical aspect, but just to understand at a high level, what I would do as a hacker, I will try to, use HTTP, the HTTP thing that we use. I would try to use as a hacker the HTTP proxying techniques to actually bypass the multi-factor authentication in order to take over victims or a target's email account, Office 365 account. That way, I will have all the emails with me as a hacker and access to, and I can then plan this BEC attack very commonly. That is what we are seeing at the moment. So all in all, on this slide, yes, threats remains the same, more or less. Ransomware, phishing, malware, supply chain, cloud, BEC. However, they are constantly evolving. And the key message on this slide is that we cannot, in security world, we cannot stick to one level of hygiene and can, operate with that for a continuous time. We need to keep up to the evolution that is constantly happening, and we need to update our security hygiene. With that, I think it's a perfect segue to my next slide to tell you what is, based on the evolutions that we see, what are the security hygienes that we should be aware of, and or from our perspective, what we could educate our clients or make them aware that, look, this is something, if you have, could actually make your risk a good risk from our perspective, and that way it would be easier for us to provide you the coverage. Not full guarantee, because it differs on a case-on-case basis. However, more or less, we are quite comfortable as long as it's meeting these points. Now, sorry if you feel this slide is too much of words, but I'll try to make it quite simple again, as I promised earlier. So you see, in this slide, what we've done is on the left-hand side, we've given you the key categories that you should be looking at in order to understand the risk better, or in order to and it's industry agnostic. So it's not limited to just the FIs or the retails or the aviation. Across the industry, it could be applied, right? So on the left-hand side, what you see, it's the key categories. On the right-hand side, it's detailing the category to actually in respective bullet points to tell you what are the points that you should be very particular about in terms of the security hygiene. Let's quickly go through them. Patching. Now, with patching, two key points that we should definitely be very aware of. First, the patch release. There are regular patches that gets released by respective vendors, Microsoft or whichever software that you're using. So it's very important that at least 1 month patching frequency, as a frequency is being done. I mean, if it is lesser, even better, and which is what is the second point. The critical patches should be applied within 7 days. If you don't, clearly it means your software or the version that you are running with is clearly vulnerable and can be exploited. It's just like the Androids and the iPhones that we use, right? We keep getting respective patches, and we keep getting reminders. It's always recommended critical patches within 7 days, normal patches within 1 month. That's the hygiene we should use given the threats that we are seeing. Second one is password policy with multi-factor authentication. Now, three things to take note. First is complex password. So it's not just about, putting up passwords. I could put my password as Harpreet. Now, if a hacker wants to try out my password, he can easily do that, right? But what if I put Harpreet123? That could still be easily used. Now, you must be thinking how. You would have heard about a term called brute force attack, right? Now, brute force attack, right? Now, brute force attack, actually, hackers nowadays use a software that is doing various permutation and combinations to target a certain email account with different combinations of what could be the password policy. So that's very important. So keeping a complex password would mean that it's becomes tough for the hackers to get to actually get to or get the right password, and this needs to be updated frequently. Then it comes multi-factor authentication. Now that is twofolds. It has to be for the remote logins that you do, and secondly, to all the critical applications that you have. Now that multi-factor authentication could be your mobile authentication you do, or a one-time PIN password, as long as there is a multi-factor authentication attached to your email and password login credentials. Then comes security awareness training. Security awareness training is basically giving you, to prevent from a phishing attack. Your security team is being constantly reminding you that, look, there is this phishing campaigns being launched by so-and-so hackers, which could have a different themes on a various intervals, and that is an education that is being provided to all the staff, especially when you have an organization with a lot of staff, very critical aspect that you need to take note of. Then comes detection and protection controls. This means your firewalls needs to be there and constantly updated. And secondly, you need to have your anti-malware softwares, so that your McAfee's, your Nortons, which you and I we typically have on our laptops, so that needs to be there. And key thing is, it needs to have a scope of all the assets for the organizations and not just for a limited scope. Then comes BCM, which is business continuity management. Business continuity management is about having regular backups, and then regular backups needs to be taken at least weekly, if not daily. I mean, daily is a good practice, but again, some organizations may not be able to do so. Then comes the business impact analysis. An organization should know their RTO and RPO, which means recovery time objective and recovery point objective. RTO is, if an incident happens, does the organization have the capability to return back to business operations in a certain period of time? And that's what the business conduct exercise every year to understand that. RPO means, what is my, as an organization, what is my acceptable time frame that with which, if there is a certain loss of data, I can still survive, but beyond which I will have a critical impact on my business operation. So it's just indicating a maturity of an organization to know how much they would be affected should there be a scenario. And clearly, the third point under BCM is about redundancy, which you need to have a backup. And this is where your disaster recovery test should happen at least once every year. Then comes access control. Very clearly, we need all the staff who are normal users, their access rights should be prohibited. And the other aspect is the admin users who have privileged access should be regularly monitored, because if not, they could also, it could be misused for whatever data leakage or any other, exfiltration of data issues. Then comes information security policy. I think it's a guiding principle. So the key point here is that an organization should have a formal information security policy. Why this is important? Because then this provides an organization with a guiding principle that gets regularly reviewed and updated, given these threats, as we saw in the previous slide, that gets that are continuously evolving. So it's a very important aspect to understand the maturity of an organization from a security perspective. Then compliance security check. This is the VAPT. VAPT means it's a vulnerability assessment penetration test. This means that a company should, at least once every year, test the strength of their network by asking somebody outside, which is a professional organization, to come in and say, can you act like a hacker and try to penetrate in my system? That way, an organization understands how easy or tough it is for an outside hacker to basically penetrate in the organization. So this is a very important aspect. And then as part of the penetration test results, they then know where are the faults or where are the things they need to fix and with what priority. So that's what we are trying to understand. Last but not least, network segmentation, which is what is the additional network security. What the first point is DMZ, demilitarized zone. This means that all your internet facing applications are bundled into a separate network because that they are constantly communicating to the outside world. So their probability to get something malicious is very common. So you do not want to combine your normal BAU stuff, your production stuff with those external facing zones. So a DMZ gives you an additional layer of security by separating your network virtually so that it is not affected should there be any malicious transfer coming from outside environment. And finally, under security is third-party vendor management. Now, especially manufacturing, especially supply chain companies would have a lot of vendors that they, IT suppliers that they associate with. And typically those IT suppliers will have access to the corporate network. So it's very important for an organization not only to secure their own network, but it's also important to understand what their associated vendors are doing who has a connection to secure their network. Because if they get attacked, like I told you earlier, it's a typical supply chain attack that could be used as a backdoor entry to your organization. So we should always consider about what are the topics they are using in order to secure their network in addition to your own corporate network. That's pretty much I had. I'm sorry if it took some time. However, I would end with one concluding sentence that if an organization think they are smart, the hackers are getting more smarter. Things are evolving, especially in security arena. It evolves day on day basis, sometimes hour on hour basis. So it's very important for us to keep updated with this threat landscape, understand it, and then apply the minimum security hygiene accordingly. With that, I would then hand it back to Wolfgang or the next presenter, and then we'll take it from there.
I'm just coming in. So as one or the other has noted, Harpreet was using my computer. So please accept our apologies that we have only put my name in the beginning. So we appreciate that the hosts have done that name change from remote. I've spotted a couple of questions via the chat function. So we can try to attend to that, but maybe it is better if you just put them in the Q&A. And I believe that all the questions I saw there, we can actually answer via typing. And with that, we would suggest to give it back to the hosts and the next agenda item. Waiting for the hosts.
Oh, thank you, Wolfgang and Harpreet. I was so busy looking at all the comments in the comment section, and there's so much going on there. Questions, comments about how insightful this was, and I want to preempt something already because I know we're going to get the question. After the session today on InsureTalk, on the website, InsureTalk.co.za, the team will be posting a recording of this program today, and you'll be able to see the presentation there again because there was so much technical content in the presentation. So we wish to thank you for taking the time to prepare a very comprehensive and insightful presentation today. You know, there's that saying about you don't know what you don't know. And I think it's part of the problem that we face as an industry with understanding cyber risk, because we don't really get it. We don't understand it until something happens to you where you experience it. It's only then that the risk becomes evident. So it's sessions like today where we as an industry can't sit back and say we didn't know. So Wolfgang and Harpreet, we really, really appreciate what you did for us today. On that note, I want to talk to tell you about what's happening next. So our next presentation is we have a monthly slot by the CEO of the Insurance Institute of South Africa, Thokozile Mahlangu. She is an institution and has been part of InsureTalk from day one. Also one of our partners here, together with Munich Re today, who's our headline partner, sponsorship partner for today. Our CPD partner is the Insurance Institute of South Africa. And Thokozile is going to give us our usual update now. So over to you, Madam CEO. Let's hear what's happening at the Insurance Institute of South Africa.
Good morning. Today I am going to share briefly on 5 points. First one being AIE. Following a huge success of the AIE 2023, we opened super early bird registration due to demand. Delegates were asking us when is the registration opening, so we took the opportunity and opened up super early bird registration, and we are already at over 200 registrants. We've now switched over to early bird registration, which is opened until the end of December. So take advantage of this opportunity and register at these low rates. In January, we're going to switch over to normal rates. So take advantage and register for the AIE 2024 at the early bird registration. 2024 will be our 50th a year where we've been hosting the conference, so it's going to be a big one. We've got big plans. We've already started engaging on the theme, the topics, and we've secured speakers already, which will share in due course. This is what you do not want to miss. 50th AIE. You don't want to miss that. Visit our website to register and do take advantage of these low rates. The second point I want to talk to you about is a broker channel that we've recently introduced, and this gives an opportunity to SMME brokers, upcoming brokers, startups, or a startup not just in broking, but startup in an insurance environment. If you're an organization starting up in the insurance environment, you have an opportunity to partner with the ISA and become a corporate partner. That will give you some of the benefits of corporate partners. It will give you an opportunity to elevate your brand, to elevate your service offering, to make yourself known in the industry. So if you are on the call and you work for a startup organization or an SMME organization, do take advantage. Reach out to the office and reach out to our relationship management officer, Vumo Uhlentanzi, who can help you with the onboarding process. And I promise you that the rates have been designed to be able to meet your budget. So do take advantage of that opportunity. We've started with our in-person seminars. That's another point I wanted to touch on. The in-person seminars are starting up 29th of September. So if you have not registered, do register to attend those sessions. It is free for the first 30 members in good standing. So do take advantage if you have not registered. This is another opportunity that gives you a platform to learn, to grow yourself. As I always say, we are lifelong learners. So this is another opportunity to contribute towards your knowledge base. I also want to remind you that our webinars are ongoing. We've ramped up the frequency. In a week, we have about 3 or 4 happening, and this is what we have to respond to as a professional body. We have a responsibility to make sure that there are platforms for continuing professional development for our members. It's open to non-members as well. But if you're a non-member, why don't you switch over and become a member and get the access to the webinars at no cost to you? Another point I wanted to share today is that we are introducing the 2023 Insurance Director Training. The training will be starting in October. We've sent out a call to action, so we are inviting all eligible individuals to apply and take advantage of this training. The training is sponsored by Sasria. Thank you, Sasria. And we deliver it in partnership with the Institute of Directors, as well as Munich Re, who comes in and brings in the insurance element and really looking at how can we protect the balance sheet, how can we enable directors or eligible directors to have conversations around protecting the balance sheet, having those conversations in the boardroom on how the balance sheet can be protected. And lastly, I want to talk to you about this t-shirt that I'm wearing. I'm an ISA fellow member, so to all fellow members, this t-shirt is available for order. You can place your order and showcase your designation through wearing the t-shirt. Yes, we've received lots of queries on what about associates? What about licensees? That's also coming. So in the next few weeks, we will also be launching the t-shirts for associate members as well as licensee members. And I want to close off by saying, if you are on the call and you are not a professional member, I again ask, as I have asked many times, what are you waiting for? Become a member that is accredited by ISA, a SAQA approved professional body. Elevate your standing in the insurance industry. Elevate your standing as a professional and be accredited by the only professional body in insurance. Prove your standing that you are committed to continuing professional development. Prove your standing by showing that you are committed to the profession. Thank you. I will see you next month.
Thank you, Thokozile. I received your email for the directors training, and I thought that was such a fantastic initiative by the Insurance Institute of South Africa. Just to reiterate, together with the Institute of Directors and Munich Re, they're presenting this fantastic training and development opportunity. I did my training with the IOD a number of years ago, and I've done, as you would imagine, over the course of 30 years, lots of training interventions, and the IOD training I found exceptionally valuable, just to understand how companies are supposed to operate, the compliance responsibilities and risks that you face. And if you are in the game of insurance and perhaps in the game of providing insurance solutions to directors and officers, you would be in a better position to understand the risk and to underwrite it. So I really do want to recommend that that the attendees today go onto the IISA website and find out a bit more about this training intervention. It is a fantastic opportunity. Our next insert is also a regular insert, and one that I look forward to so much every month because I get all my news here. So Rianette Whitehead, who is the co-owner and editor of FA News, and also the mother of the Insurance Apprentices, is every month she gives us a media update and tells us a bit more about what's happening in the industry and also what's happening in the world of FA News and the Insurance Apprentice, because we're going into the next season now, so there's lots of things happening. So we're going to hand over to Rianette now, who's going to give us our monthly media update.
Welcome to InsureTalk 2 for 2023. FA News is the official media partner for InsureTalk this year, so my role is to tell you and remind you about the news and happenings in the industry. So let's start. One of the recent developments, which is quite newsworthy, is Chubb pulling their property and casualty business out of South Africa. Accident and health remains in business. Since the last time we spoke, South Africa has also been grey-listed by the Financial Action Task Force. What does it mean for the South African insurance market? South African companies will be subjected to higher levels of due diligence, which will in turn be administratively quite burdensome, and it will create unforeseen costs and will delay the execution of transactions. This will most certainly harm the competitiveness of local companies operating in the global market. Another significant implication is the fact that South African insurance are heavily reliant on reinsurance programs concluded with foreign reinsurers, which will most likely result in the imposing of additional and more intrusive enhanced customer due diligence on local insurers. This will most likely increase the cost of compliance and potentially the cost of reinsurance to local insurers. Thank you, Weber Wenzel, for those insights. On the 29th of March, DocFox, a company which specializes in FICA compliance, will host a webinar on what the grey listing actually means for us, what the practical implications are, and what the responsibility of accountable institutions are around this. We have sent this invite via the FA News website last week, but if you need more detail, just drop me a mail, rianet@fanews.co.za, and I will forward the invite to you. I have mentioned in the last InsureTalk session that FA News does newsletters, we do the website, and we obviously do the Insurance Apprentice. But for now, I would quickly like to remind you of some of the newsletters we've done in the last, say, month or two that really had some good open rates. Those are probably the ones you would want to go and maybe read again. Our newsletters are sent from Monday to Thursday, and it's on topical industry issues. So a few newsletters which is worth mentioning is 8 March, titled Flooding Sinks Insurer Profits. 1 March, Brokers, Advisors and their PI Policies, always topical. 28 Feb, good open rate, what the FATF, which is obviously about the grey listing. 17 Feb, think twice before emailing bank details. That was really a good open rate. And the 19th Jan was, do you have 1.5 million Rand plus for cybersecurity compliance? Sensitive topic, and I think a topic you're going to see a little bit more about in the next few months. Another reminder that you can also do your continuous professional development hours with the FA News magazine articles. Our magazine is print and digital. You can do 3 hours per edition, 6 editions. So for us, it's really important to just not do a tick box exercise around our CPD articles. There goes a lot of thought, a lot of planning, and a lot of detail into what we decide has to be CPD articles. So it's worth a read. It's really around development, and you are really learning something. So no cost to sign up to our CPD system, no cost to download the magazine. So make sure you reach out and sign up. So we are busy with our April edition, which will be out soon, mid-April. Topics in this edition include ChatGPT, the importance of going back to basics, trend of stealing expensive cars, conditions of average, and then the whole issue around war, terrorism, and catastrophe in cyber insurance. So I think speaking of CPD, I would like just to mention the following. And I think I'm speaking on behalf of the IRSA, I'm speaking on behalf of the FBI, on behalf of your compliance officer, compliance companies, and employers. A reminder that the CPD deadline is 31 May. To finish and to be done with 31 May. And when I say 31 May, I don't mean you should wait until the 29th or the 30th of May to get those last hours sorted. You have time, people. Do it do it, do it. Sort this out. Yes, we are only in March, but sort this out while you have time. Maybe not a good ad about FA News, but our system crashed on the 31st of May last year because everyone wanted to do their last bit of hours on this last day of the cycle. We had probably around 150 people registering for the first time on our platform. I'm not sure that they managed to come right with us because it was complete chaos. Everything came to a standstill. So just a reminder, make sure you complete those hours well in time. So that's my motherly comment for the day done. A reminder of some good conferences coming up. Insurance Crime Bureau 2023's annual conference is happening on 10 and 11 May with the theme Navigating the Future Through Infinite Opportunities. You can go to the South African Insurance Crime Bureau, saicb.co.za website and just register there. The IIE conference, obviously with the theme Collaborate, Cultivate, Create, is happening from 24 to 26 July for those who have not yet registered at Sun City. It is obviously hybrid as well, but people, this is obviously and always the best place to network. On top of great topics and great conversations happening, the networking is really the reason why most of us are going to this conference. We've all been sitting and doing this hybrid working, not going to the office that much anymore, not seeing people that much anymore. So use this time. If you get it, use it. It's a great opportunity. So make sure you register for that. Speaking of conferences, I don't think I've mentioned a website that FA News has created or have built quite a few years ago. It's called thecalendar.org.za. The whole idea around the calendar is that you as a event organizer or a conference organizer can go and upload your event, any event relevant to insurance and financial services industries. You can go and upload your own event, doesn't matter what it is. There's an opportunity to put banners, links, details. You can upload your event. We get a notification on our side to say that there is an event that has been uploaded, and we approve it on our side. There are no costs attached to it. The idea is that people can go and find conferences and events, and that people don't double book big things on the same day. I have to end with a highlight, which is the Insurance Apprentice Season 9. That is kicking off on 30 March. The teaser for episode 1 has been released last week, and the first episode, sponsored by Discovery Insure, takes our audience on a journey of how we got to the top 10 contestants after receiving around 115 applications. The elimination rounds were so inspiring because I really got to meet so many bright, young, energetic people. And while going through these rounds, the first rounds were sponsored by Aon, and then Discovery Insure was the top 30. I knew that this was going to be another fantastic season. I have to just give one word of thanks and acknowledgement to my two main judges this year, which is once again the amazing Simon Coleman and then Knox Dlamini, who is giving Simon a good go. So make sure you don't miss this. So I will also mention sponsors as we move along the way, because without the sponsors, obviously we can't do much. So the 3 sponsors I would really like to highlight today is Lloyd's. So the winner goes to Lloyd's. They will be attending the Lloyd's Worldwide Broker Forum. And obviously Lloyd's pay for the flights, the accommodation, and everything else, which is a massive prize for anyone working young person working in the short-term insurance industry. Old Mutual ensures another very important and critical sponsor for us because filming happens at the Old Mutual Sandton office, courtesy of Old Mutual Insure. Standard Bank Insurance Brokers, they make sure that our judges and contestants stay comfortable and in luxury during filming week while they are staying at the Standard Bank Global Leadership Center. It is exciting, so please don't miss this. And you can earn 1 CPD hour probably for the first ep and 0.5 to 1. It still depends on how long the episodes are for the rest of the season. So this is me, Rianette Whitehead, FA News editor and project manager of the Insurance Apprentice, signing off. Enjoy the rest of your session and see you in another month.
Okay, there's a first for everything. And it seems that we had the wrong insert for Rianette for this month. So there's a lot of wake-up people on the call, and they alerted us to it. So we apologize for that, but we have the right insert. So we're going to get the latest news and show it to you now. So another 5 minutes or so, listening to Rianette. We love listening to Rianette. So the latest news coming up next from Rianette and FA News. Thank you.
Good morning, InsureTalkers. Always happy when I have to do my InsureTalk chat, and it's great to get the feedback from you when I bump into you at events and conferences, so keep on going with that. My name is Rianette Whitehead, FA News editor and founder of the Insurance Apprentice. Once again, an absolute honor to be here. And thank you for the team at InsureTalk for including FA News and the Insurance Apprentice. So normally I update you on industry events, I update you on what's happening generally in the industry and also what we do at FA News. And I decided today that I'm going to do it a little bit different. I would like to give someone else the opportunity to talk today for a very good reason. And the reason is that applications for the Insurance Apprentice will be closing on 30 September. I need you to understand the urgency of this, not 1 October, not 2 October, 30 September. That means it's about a week and 2-3 days that you have to apply. Serious thought into this, and if you are vaguely keen, if you're 35 or younger, if you've been in the industry for 4 years or more, then this is something you really need to listen to and please consider. We've picked up that the senior youngsters sometimes don't want to take part because they don't want to be seen as not making it to the top 10 or not winning it. And I want to urge you to see this as a growth opportunity, your own journey, your own growth. We've got phenomenal stuff happening in that week. You'll not believe what you go through as a person in that 1 week. And past that, we've got so many exciting things planned, and I will hopefully share a little bit more on that. But in the meantime, please make sure you enter. We're talking mentorships, we're talking coaches, we're talking amazing opportunities, and hopefully the Lloyd's trip again. Take your time, listen to the chat I had with Christopher Oppenau, winner of the Insurance Apprentice 2023, about his journey, how he sees the competition, and what happened with him during that week of filming. So over to you, Christopher.
Hi, my name is Christopher Oppenau. I am currently the head of claims liabilities at Bright Insurance and the winner of the Insurance Apprentice 2023. The reason why I entered the Insurance Apprentice is actually twofold. Firstly, a colleague of mine referred me to the competition, and I decided, you know what, go ahead and just do it. Secondly, it was an opportunity for me to sort of test my skills, my experience, my grit against some of the brightest young minds within South Africa. A lot of people that I've been speaking to recently around entering this competition have been in quite senior, or are currently in quite senior positions. And there seems to be a fear, so to speak, and a little bit of insecurity, where they believe that perhaps their seniority might be questioned by just entering this competition. But I think one of the most important components, or one of the most important considerations, is realizing that this isn't a competition only. This is an opportunity to be better and to learn from people who are perhaps much better than you in certain respects. It's an opportunity to highlight your blind spots and improve on those aspects within your professional career. But one of the things I focused on was just being my authentic self. And I think just understanding that I have a certain set of skills and experience that I could bring, and just highlighting those in the tasks, and then leveraging the people around you and their ability to sort of bring out the best in yourself. Filming week was probably one of the most transformational experiences in my entire life. When I reflect, even now, my first day on the show, and you'll see it in the show, it's quite stiff. And the one thing that I made sure that I did every single day was reflect on what my performance was on that particular day, what the task was about, and how I could have improved. The whole point of the show is to create this sense of self-awareness that you wouldn't ordinarily get within a normal corporate environment, because the conditions within a corporate environment allow you a longer amount of time to start working on things. Whereas in filming week, you literally have hours. You go through your first task, for example, you finish off with a whole bunch of feedback, and it's up to you on what you do with that feedback to improve yourself for the next day. Reflecting back, there are a couple of highlights from the Insurance Apprentice 2023. I think firstly was the connections I created with my fellow contestants, which have persisted far past the show, to the point where we've created an industry initiative designed towards enabling younger professionals. And it's an opportunity for us to meet beyond the show, and we formed these quite a strong bond. The show pushed me down this accelerated path of growth from both a personal and professional point of view. And coupled with that is, in all of these tasks that we completed on the show, it was meeting some of these industry giants, and actually having one-on-ones with them during the show as well as after. And those relationships, I mean, you really just can't get that in your day-to-day dealings. Getting selected to be in the top 10 in the Insurance Apprentice obviously means the real work starts. And one of the fears I think many of my fellow contestants had, including myself, were the intense judging that we were going to go through, especially by the infamous Judge Red Simon, as well as Knox. But the judging that you experience when you are there, the feedback you receive is invaluable. And it really is up to you and how you sort of take that feedback, filter it, and apply it thereafter. And what you will notice, and what I notice especially with my fellow contestants, is that we grew every single day. Every single day. The feedback we received, the support we received from the judges was incredible. And that's the part that people don't see. And, you know, I think it's really important that people understand that this is not a show where you are given a task and you are told to run off on your own and try and figure it out. You receive a lot of support. And with that judging comes a lot of, well, nuggets of wisdom that you can apply for future tasks and in the tasks that you are working on currently. What the show does is that it exposes you to so many points so many facets of our industry that today you might be a claims professional, but after coming off the show, your direction or your compass might point you to a different direction or a different career path. It helped me understand that I need to surround myself by people who are better than me so that I can do better in the same way that I would do for them. It allowed me to think about challenges that I'm going through every single day very differently. And currently, in my current professional role, it's allowed me to, interact with my stakeholders, where I'm at much more ease with myself. There's a level of nervousness that's no longer present. It's great. Just do it. Just enter. Do it and see what happens. And you could be sitting here like myself, winner of the Insurance Apprentice, and not have anticipated that when you entered. Because I can tell you, when you enter, yes, it's a competition. You want to win, but don't go in wanting to win only. Go in wanting to learn and let winning happen as the process continues. For anyone who is on the fence about entering the Insurance Apprentice 2024, look, just do it. My colleagues and I who have been on the show are really, really open to having these conversations with you. So if you're thinking about it and you have any questions about the actual process, any concerns, anything at all, you can contact me. You can link up with us on LinkedIn, on any sort of social media platforms. Email us. We're here. We want to support this initiative. One of the things that the show really resonates with is the value of the talent that we have within our industry. And so if you're sitting on the fence, just do it. Take the leap. I want to take the opportunity to thank Norton Rose Fulbright for affording me the opportunity to share my journey on the Insurance Apprentice 2023.
Thank you, Christopher. I'd like to add that Christopher, along with 4 previous TII contestants and 2 other colleagues, have started the Claims Forum after this year's Insurance Apprentice. It's an idea that Christopher was playing around with, but taking part and going through what he did go through just made him realize that the time is right. So I'll be giving the Claims Forum a little bit of attention in the next edition of the FA News magazine, and I'll be doing an interview with them. But in the meantime, I thought I'll just quickly mention what they are all about. So what's the Claims Forum? At this stage, it's a LinkedIn group that they formed. They do monthly sessions. Okay, so describe the Claims Forum. It's an initiative to foster a culture of continuous learning and improvement in short-term insurance claims service. The aim is to elevate the standard of claims service across the industry and enhance the overall customer experience. They believe that they can achieve this goal by working together and sharing their collective knowledge and experience. The bottom line about our industry is that people experience us as the industry, us as specific companies, us as brokers, through the claims experience, not through the quote or the monthly premiums they pay. It's when they have that claim, right? So my plea to you is to support them, listen to them, take note of them, especially because if you are a little bit younger and feel that you really have a few things still to learn. They've got a lot to share. It's once a month that they do this. They've got different speakers and they share some technical things and some journeys. It's really worth it to spend some time and connect with them on LinkedIn. I've taken a lot of time up today. Well, miss myself and Christopher. So I am going to end, but I would like to remind you, enter the Insurance Apprentice if you're 35 or younger, and if you are a manager and you've got these amazing bright people, remember, it doesn't mean that they're taking part in the apprentice and they're going to leave you. They're going to grow. They're going to grow to a level that you really want them to grow. You're going to see what their potential is and how you can use them differently within your own company. I promise you that we take the conversations quite serious with the contestants, that this is not a platform where you can just, you take part and next month you go and have a new job. There's a process, there's a journey, and for me, it's quite important that you first give back and go through the journey in your own company. These people normally have a lot to give. They've got a lot of respect and loyalty, especially if you, as an employer and as a manager, walk the road with them, embrace and support them through this experience, because it's just a phenomenal experience that they go through. So 30 September, applications close. Thank you once again, InsureTalk, for the opportunity. My name is Rianette Whitehead, FI News editor, founder of the Insurance Apprentice. Enjoy the rest of your session and see you next month.
Thank you, Rianette, and it was great to actually get the right insert on the show this morning. So I'm very aware of what's happening on Insurance Apprentice, because, of course, I'm married to Simon Coleman, who also is known as Judge Dredd. So I experience a little bit of what's happening behind the scenes. Very excited because the company that I am involved in, AMI, is also a sponsor of the upcoming season. Episode 2, I think. So very excited to be involved in this fantastic initiative. I don't know if you listened. I mean, I don't know how many under 35s are on the call today, but the entries close on the 30th of September. You have to enter. It is incredible exposure for your professional profile, for your standing in this industry. And did you hear what Rianette said? The winner goes to Lloyd's of London. I remember it was one of my bucket list items when I was young in the industry. I wanted to go to the Lloyd's of London, where it all started, and be there and see how it works. So that is a fantastic opportunity, and it's well worth the anxiety that you go through as part of the competition. So yeah, Rianette, again, thank you so much. We appreciate having you here on the show every month. So next up, we have another cybersecurity insert. It's Charles Eckerman. He is back on the show. He's been one of our speakers before. He's going to talk to us about the latest cyber incidents latest cyber incidents in Southern Africa and how such could have been avoided. So how these incidents could have been avoided. So it's a topic that's specific to Southern Africa, to South Africa. We were just listening to the speakers from Munich Re, and Charles is going to give us some very unique insights with regards to the cyber risk in Southern Africa. So Charles is currently the Group Chief Executive Officer at AVES Cyber International, and he assists organizations with strategic IT solutions. He's got more than 27 years in-depth experience in the IT industry, specializing in banking, government, automotive, manufacturing, and telecom industry verticals. He's got a proven track record in IT and in business strategy in the SMB and enterprise markets. He's got an incredible career behind him, and his goal is to build a world-class team who can solve problems using technology, people, and processes, the holy trilogy. So, Charles, I am looking forward to your insightful talk on cybersecurity in Southern Africa.
Thank you very much. It's so great to see such a big audience. I mean, we are heading for Cyber Awareness Month next month. And I just sort of looked up, like, why do people create awareness months? It's because there's a national problem or there's a global problem. And the cyber insurance chat from an insurance perspective couldn't have been more appropriate than it is this month. So let me just quickly share my screen with you. Are you seeing the right one or the wrong one? Sorry. All right. I assume it's the right one. So talking about cyber risks, what is it? Where is it happening? When is it happening? How is it happening? So I'm just going to touch onto a few of these points today. So we're closely associated. I mean, we're a partner for Munich Re to do cyber incident response in Africa. And from time to time, we get these incident responses to handle. So as Wolfgang mentioned, roadside assistance from our IT perspective. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of things that have happened this year. So this is not talking from theory. This is talking from a real world case perspective. And the first one was a case that we handled, and these were user credentials that were compromised. Now, user credential compromises has been in the news in the last few months, and it's specifically because of these massive database breaches that have taken place. If you think about Experian and all this intellectual property databases that have been compromised, which means that people's username and passwords are actually out there. And the challenge is that many times we use sort of like the same password for the same stuff. It's sort of like using the same key for access to different platforms. And in this case, it was happening in January. The staff of a group company was notified by a client that payments was made into their account, but then realized that the banking details were not those that they originally had loaded on their banking system. And how is this possible? How does this happen? And obviously, in this case, the accounts of this specific company didn't have any form of multi-factor authentication. Now, Harpreet spoke about multi-factor authentication just now, that it could be bypassed as well. But however, see multi-factor authentication as a second key to your vault. It literally is a second way of ensuring that when you gain access into your critical infrastructure or your critical service and even your email, which is critical, that those will be probably protected. So they didn't have any form of multi-factor authentication to gain access to those user mail accounts. And the attackers were then able to gain access to this group's domain. What does that mean? They actually got access to the castle of that specific client, and that castle being their whole Office 365 environment. So it's as if they were sitting in their offices with full control over their emails. They had control over certain people's emails. And that then basically, and it was basically just two users that were compromised in this process. However, they actually had access to their full Office 365 mail server. So they sent these mails out legitimately from that domain, which to the different suppliers, with a new set of banking details. So obviously the consequences of that was a huge reputational damage that have taken place, because they now had to reverse and tell everyone that the database and the information has been compromised. So you can just imagine the amount of trust that they had to recover there, and obviously a direct financial losses due to incorrect payments. So payments were made into the cyber criminals' bank accounts and not into their bank account. So there was a direct financial loss as well. Luckily, they picked it up quite early in the process, but by diverting back into their clients, as I say, it was a huge group, was quite a bit of a challenge. The second one, and I'm quite sure many of you have received this kind of thing, and sometimes you just need to look at it and probably just look at it from a bit of a pinch of salt. Attackers sent an email, that was like a blackmail, to most of the company email addresses. So it's very easy to have company email addresses. I mean, you would find it on the internet. It's publicly knowledge. It's available. It's not a secret. But they've sent this to quite a couple of people. Now you can just see how targeted this was. So they sent the emails to a whole lot of role players, and then they said that they do have confidential information. They don't know whether they have, but they said they do have confidential information, and that they're required to pay a ransom to be paid for this not to be leaked out into the area, so they out into the internet. So you can just imagine the paranoia that this is creating, because it's not just one email sent to one individual, it's an email sent to a whole lot of individuals within one organization, senior people, etc. And that's like, wow, have we been compromised? So how is this possible? Well, it's like receiving any kind of phone call and people trying to get information from you, or telling you that you won something, or receiving a SMS that you've won the lotto, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't mean that someone did in fact click on a link and that was compromised, but it does mean that there's a lot of criminals out there. Remember, the world is in a huge turmoil at the moment. So from a financial perspective, there are huge pressures all over the world, and cyber criminals will just keep on growing, because they can sit anywhere in the world and actually rob you. They can sit anywhere in the world and blackmail you. It's not like you can go to the local police and get them arrested. They could sit anywhere in the world, and that what makes cybercrime such a difficult concept to contain, and a difficult concept to actually prosecute from that matter. It's only the high-end cases which really gets into the Interpols and the Europols and so on. So several users received these mails, and it created all this internal paranoia. And basically the call to action was to do a bit of a high-level cyber risk assessment. I'll share a bit more about that with you a bit later on, just to say, guys, are we okay? Do we have a problem, or are we okay? Without having to spend a lot of money to try and go and search whether the information was covered. And of course, this is where cyber insurance is a massive peace of mind, because if you have that data compromise, and you've met all your minimum requirements from a policy perspective, you can at least have someone that will help you out. And this is exactly where Munich comes in. The third scenario that has happened, and there's quite a couple, and I'll just want to touch onto some of the core few ones. This was a targeted attack. So this is not a general mail that has been sent out to a whole lot of individuals, telling them about possible extortion, but it was a very, very specific targeted attack. And this happened in July, where, and it's a loan management company. Their system was attacked with 6,300 unique ID number strikes. And what does it mean? It means that, and by the way, sorry, there was a second attack that took place in August, where there was about 44,000 unique strikes that took place 1 month after the other. So these are unique identified numbers that were used to generate a large hit on the same website, companyx.co.za. And the system was disabled and charged for each credit check that was initiated. So obviously, this is a company, they are providing a service which is hosted by company Z, and a service is provided by company Y. So every time a credit check is being done on your ID number, money is then subtracted from your account. You're basically being billed for every search that has taken place. And the client only realized that they've had this breach once they got their bill. So you can just imagine the direct service cost associated to that. And all they actually had to do, and which they did not have in place, they updated and completed a sign-up process, which now requires an OTP, a one-time PIN, to continue the required steps. Now, one would think, but that's so logic. I mean, if you do a transaction and you do a lookup, I think it's finding, it should be there, but I think it's finding that balance between user experience and protecting your cyber estate, protecting your IT environment in the best possible way. So yeah, I think again, this was like a minimum requirement that they had to put in place, a basic requirement that they have to put in place rather, and it would have saved them a fortune of money. So that was the third case. A fourth case, and we all get mails, and I haven't put it here, but I was just thinking about it as I went through it, is obviously this whole thing about clicking on links. Now, we have heard this story over and over again in terms of people receiving mails and clicking on those links. So 95% of SMBs are targeted via emails. So the most cyber attacks are coming via the mails. So again, and I'm going to touch onto that in terms of how this should be covered. So just to highlight a couple of the points that I've mentioned above and some more, and there's some questions that also came up in the session, was if I store my data in the cloud, will it be more protected? And the answer is yes, and a very big no. Yes, from a perspective that your data will always be available, because what all these cloud providers will do, instead of you hosting your servers and your power and your building and everything and your internet, it is hosted in their data center. And sure, there is no way you can get access to that physical data, the physical servers and things like that and so on. And there's very, very little risk of power outages, et cetera, because of the backup generators and uninterrupted power supplies, etc. However, the weakest link is the password, the username and password that is being used. So the access, how you access that information. And we find a lot of people go into cloud, they go into an Office 365 environment, and they think, well, now my data is safe. It is not. Microsoft or any of these other service providers do not take any form of responsibility of the safety of your data. They will host your data, but how you access the data is absolutely your responsibility. And so many times, do we find that people have migrated over onto Office 365 and they've got very little or very poor configuration of how people access that data, access those mails, access those mail servers, or access even confidential databases that they've hosted in those cloud environments. So poor access control, no multi-factor authentication activated, although it's there. It just needs to be switched on, but people just don't switch it on, and it's not switched on by default. I think that's the important thing. And then Harpreet also spoke about supply chain vulnerabilities. So people tend to share information either on OneDrive or Dropbox or all these kind of things, and they don't have the necessary security layers in terms of how they share. They just share it openly. So anyone that has that link versus only if this link goes to you, can you actually open that information? So very, very basic things. We spoke about the data breaches. We hear about it. We see about it. Again, hence Cyber Awareness Month, because we're picking up it so much. And then still the remote work environments. So in the remote work environments where people have unsafe Wi-Fi networks. So they've got a Wi-Fi router that you have at home, and the username and password on the Wi-Fi router is still admin. You can literally be just right next door, the neighbor, and you can see, oh, I see you've got this brand of router used, and let me just quickly log into that router by using default admin or whatever the case may be, because you can go and Google what the default username and passwords are for those kind of routers, and then voila, I've got access to your internet. I can actually surf on your internet. And in the process of having the local home computers on that same internet, I can actually gain access to your computers in your house without even knowing, because you've opened sharing and file sharing, because we're one big nice family. But actually you are totally compromised. And I'm not even talking of people sitting at a coffee shop or at the airport these days, and they just don't have proper protection either on the computer, and when they connect, they don't have virtual private networks and encryption activated on those computers. And most of the software that you're currently using have that by default. It's a matter of activating. If you use a proper good antivirus, you probably have a whole lot of those features already available. Phishing, as I've mentioned, it's getting more sophisticated. It's not like your granny passed away in some sort of country and with spelling errors and things like that. They are very legit. It is very, very focused. Before you get some of these phishing attacks, they will study you. They will know exactly who you are by just looking at Facebook, by looking at LinkedIn. They already have a glimpse of your profile before they even attack you. And again, you may think that you're a small business and it doesn't matter. It really, really matters, because this is how cyber criminals infiltrate the larger organizations as well. They will attack the smaller organizations, compromise them, and then when they are compromised, they will then use that as a basis to attack. I mean, the classic example on a supply chain attack was a few years ago, where it was a company that wrote software for the hospital industry, and obviously those software has to be updated at all these different hospitals. And they infiltrated into the software vendor that wrote the software. And when those updates went out to all these hospitals throughout Europe, they brought half of Europe down. All hospitals that were using their software, they brought them down with some ransom attack. And it meant that they couldn't operate further. I mean, even the theaters had to close because there was the whole hospital obviously is based on its IT systems, and they couldn't operate. So ransom phishing attacks going into ransom strategies. We're just seeing more and more ransom attacks. I mean, as we know, it's nothing else than a glorified kidnap. And then cyber physical attacks, especially with a war going on. This is happening more and more, where people will attack the critical infrastructure of a country, and they will bring the critical infrastructure, water supply, electricity grid, transportation system. I mean, this happened at Transnet a few months ago, and Transnet was down for a couple of weeks, and that's why no goods could be received. So you can literally bring a whole country down by just simply taking over the critical infrastructure of a country. So yeah, a big concern in our country, and it obviously has to be addressed. And then for everyone that goes into crypto, into all these bitcoins and so on, that's also a trend that's evolving quite a bit, where the criminals hijack the third-party home and work computers to mine. So they basically use your computer to mine cryptocurrency. So your computer will be operating at 99%, but it's not 99% of you. It's only 1% of what you're using. The other percentages is used by people using your power, your computer, your compute ability to actually mine cryptocurrencies. And then this was touched onto by Wolfgang and Harpreet, but I really just want to reiterate the minimum requirements from insurance perspective. I believe these minimum requirements are so minimum. It is really not complex. It's very, very minimum. So get a proper antivirus, anti-malware software. Don't, again, I've said this so many times before, don't download the free versions. The free versions may have been created by cyber criminals. You never know. So use buy a proper acquired antivirus, and then make sure that your software, the patches, those updates that you have to do, that they are applied, especially to your sensitive systems. I mean, the requirement is that at least within 3 months, which I think is very, very long. If a critical vulnerability or a weakness in the software that you're using, that's what the vulnerability is. And a patch is to cover that vulnerability on that computer that you have. So if that vulnerability sits there, the vendors, the manufacturers of the software, doesn't matter what it is, it could be SAP, Microsoft, Google, you name it. Everyone has got vulnerabilities. Some vulnerabilities they know about, they patch them. Some vulnerabilities they only discover later on by some incident locally, or because some cyber criminal is compromised, or discovered the vulnerability and hasn't obviously disclosed it. They just use it and then infiltrate organizations. So make sure that those patches, those updates on all your platforms are properly done. And again, this is where a cloud service provider is quite good, because on the core platform, they will always make sure that those patches are being done, but not on your own computer that you're using. They won't do that. And then outdated software. I mean, there's some cases where people are still using XP and all sorts of very, very old software, believe it or not. And those are not supported by the vendors anymore. And one just needs to disclose that if it happens. And then password policy implemented according to best practices. This does not mean that you have to change your password every week or every month. Not necessarily. Just make sure that you use a smart password or have very good password vaults where you keep your passwords. And then at least for critical infrastructure, don't use the same username as you would use for your normal email address. Use more unknown kind of usernames. Don't use the username of your normal email addresses. And then user privileges. And these are for users that have access to critical systems or sensitive information. You know, a lot of people would leave an organization, and we often find that it's like a year or 2 years later, and those, for some other reason, those users have just never been removed from their Active Directory. In other words, where all the username and passwords are kept for organization. So user privilege. Make sure you give everyone access to the right information at the appropriate time, only to what they need to see. I mean, that's the whole idea of what Poppy is also trying to do in terms of sharing information. So yeah, just reassess who's got access to what information. Don't just open everything up because it's easier. Of course, it's easier, but that certainly is not the way to do it, because you're opening up yourself that confidentiality and integrity of your data will be compromised. Use proper firewalls. A firewall in IT terms or in normal household terms is nothing else than a proper fence. Put a proper fence around your building. Put a proper firewall around your IT estate, if I can call it that, and make sure it's properly configured. And again, here it's all rules are open. A firewall is nothing else than there are specific gates that certain people are allowed. The postman, not that we have a post service anymore, but the postman can come through one gate, and the milkman can come through that one, and the visitors can come through this door, and you as an employee can come through that door. That's what a firewall does. It just controls access into these different kinds of doors into your IT environment. And then remote access, again here, creating multi-factor authentication and also create virtual private networks. Now, what a VPN is, I think most of us have come across what VPN is. But just if you access your information from, especially critical information, administrators specifically, you do not link just directly with the internet into your environment. You make sure you implement proper security checks before you can link in, because if your password is compromised, they will have access to your whole organization's critical information. And that's a consequence that you will have to bear, unfortunately. And then activity logs as well, that, you know, if something does go wrong, that one can try and go and find the crumbles. Usually the cyber criminals are very sophisticated. They would remove their logs, especially if they've got access straight into your system. They also have access to your logs. They'll also remove them. But try and keep your logs in separate systems, not on the core systems that you're using, so that at least if something happens, you can actually go and identify where your weaknesses are within your environment. And then what can we do? I mean, there's been a lot of discussion, you know, and it sounds technical, and it is technical in a way. And that's the scary part is, well, I'm not cyber savvy. It's like, I mean, really, I mean, how am I going to cover this? And hence why cyber policies are often not sold as well, because I think from a broker perspective, you're almost like hesitant to say, oh, I don't even know enough about it. How do I convince my client to buy it on the one side? And what will this do to my professional status if I give the wrong advice, etc., etc.? I can honestly tell you, you can relax around it. Munich Re, with all the tool sets that they have through all the cedants, there's enough information available for you to that will help you with confidence to actually present to a client what cyber policy. Everyone needs it. It's just a matter of you having the confidence to sit in front of your client and then just talk it through. And one of the tools that are available that we've developed specifically for the insurance industry, and there's the link. You can copy that assessment, and you will then just have to register, and then you'll basically, for your own organization, you can then take a high-level assessment, and it'll give you a bit of a report. We'll give you a bit of a report back and say, what we suggest is maybe consider this and this and that. Don't worry about too much about that, because it's all within context of your organization. The second point I would suggest in very layman's terms is configure what you have the right way. So if you have antivirus and you have a firewall, at least make sure that they are properly configured. Many times we find that people have good software in place, but they are absolutely not using it to the full. It's like having a Porsche and only driving 50 kilometers per hour with it. Like, what's the use? It's like when you get in it, you drive it hard. Well, within limits. But configure what you've got in the right way. Don't just go and buy stuff because people are telling you to buy that. And that's the third point, is only acquire fit for purpose technology. You know, I mean, don't just buy what everyone tells you, like, or what everyone is trying to sell you. It's not the idea. Is ask yourself a logical question like, does this make sense? Or get a second opinion in terms of, is this technology that we now have to add on top of what we already got? It's already complex. Now, how do we add this even more? And the users are going to get more confused, and it's going to be even more difficult. So be pragmatic. Be absolutely pragmatic. We often see people spending significantly more amounts of money on the technology than they should. As I say, in most cases, you often have the right technology. Just configure it in the right way. And then if you do have big gaps, that's where the new technology comes in. And then talking about the Cyber Awareness Month just now in October, educate the whole team. Create a massive cyber awareness with everyone. I mean, one of our vendors that supply awareness training, they call it human error conquered. Human error conquered. And I do believe it affects each one of us. It affects us in many different ways, not just in money. It also affects us emotionally when we have these cyber breaches and things. And I mean, we living in a country where there's a lot of elements of trauma in terms of load shedding and all the nonsense. You know, so to go through it from a cyber attack point of view is like, no, like we shouldn't allow that. So make everyone aware of what their role is. We call it a human firewall. Everyone in the organization has a role to play to make sure that as an organization you are safe. So and that's where awareness comes in. And then ensure policies and processes are driven from the top. IT cannot take the lead on this. Often we think, IT, you guys are the expert, you sort it out. It unfortunately doesn't work that way. From an exec perspective, you have to set the tone. You have to put the policies in place, which IT needs to make sure that they implement. So if it's a password policy, you have to specify what it is. IT can draw it up, but you have to give that message through to the organization that we are serious about how we treat cyber in this organization. Hence, those policies and processes must be driven from the top, as I've mentioned there. And then lastly, and such a simple thing to do, is outsource part of that risk with a cyber policy, where your cyber policy will take up a whole lot of those risks and give you the peace of mind, you know, that at least if something does happen, like a flat tire on a car, which you are going to have, they say there's two types of companies, those that are compromised and those that don't know that they're compromised. You are going to be compromised at some stage. The extent of it will depend on how well you've done the basics right. If you've done the basics right, you'll be up and running very quickly without too much hassle and too much headache. And you can outsource it, as I said, with a cyber risk policy. And that will take care of it. And the cyber risk policy questionnaire of all the different cedants they are very clear in what they require. Make sure you just meet all of those, and they are bare minimum. I promise you, they are absolutely a bare minimum. And then, yeah, this is typically how an online assessment will look. So I've given you the link in the previous slide, and you will get here and you'll register and you'll get a voucher, and then you'll be able to access your own in your own time, in your own organization, get your IT guys involved, and quickly get a high level view of what's happening in your organization. And that will certainly guide you in terms of how you go forward. If you meet the requirements from this assessment point of view, I can tell you 99.9%, you'll meet the minimum requirements from insurance policy perspective as well. And that's the last. Yes, please stay safe. We live in an unsafe world, and I hope that that you are not compromised, and I hope that you are taking the appropriate steps to become more aware of what the risks are, and just to think for yourself, what is it that I can do? Not who can I blame, who is there to protect us, but what can I do to protect myself? And I'll conclude with one last point. And there was a question about mobile phones and the protection of mobile phones. So if you're using an Android device, and you do internet banking, and you don't have internet, and you do internet banking, and you don't have antivirus on it, good luck. The chances of your money being stolen is highly likely, because 99% of all attacks on mobile phones are on Android platforms. So look after yourself and be safe. Thank you.
Charles, thank you so much. I am so happy that I'm an iPhone user. So there's another business case there for going the Apple route. But again, so much interaction in the chat box. And this show that we're recording today will be live on the InsureTalk website for you to go back. I know that we have a huge portion of our audience that's brokers, and you have a wealth of information after this morning where you can give your clients proper risk advice around cybersecurity. So Charles, thanks for being back. We really appreciate having you on the show today. Before we go to our last speaker of the day, it's again that time, I want to talk to you about next month. So next month, we have InsureTalk Live. It's going to be a one-day hybrid conference for insurance professionals across the whole value chain, and it's on the 26th of October at the venue in Melrose Arch in Johannesburg. So it's a half-day event. It's from 9 o'clock until 3 o'clock, and you can attend in person and online. So please, all our online attendees, please join us still for the conference. And it'll be the first time that we'll do a live edition. I'm so excited. I'll be able to actually talk to people, to real people in the audience, as well as our virtual audience out there. And we want to invite you to join us. So I heard from the team here at InsureTalk that we still have a limited early bird rate available. So if you book more than 5 tickets, you get the early bird rate, and there's still are a very few tickets available. So if you are interested, please come and join us. I know when we spoke about the Insurance Apprentice earlier on, we know that Simon's quite, on the stage and center stage there. He will be at InsureTalk Live to mingle with the audience. We'll have Rianette there. Tokozile will be there. Carl Nolte from CN&CO, the whole CN&CO team. So please come and join us and network and engage and be part of this amazing digital movement that's InsureTalk, that birthed during the first months of the lockdown period. So we're really excited to meet some of you in person. So I'm going to hand you over to our last speaker of the day. We've got Ryan van der Koolwyk, who's going to talk to us on the topic of, very interesting topic, I must compliment you, Ryan, cats and mice, the evolution of cyber attacks. I can't hear what that is all about. But just to give you a bit of background on Ryan, many of you will know Ryan. He is the product champion for cyber at I2 Special Risks, another UMA in our industry. Ryan is, and just to mention that I2 Special Risks is a business responsible for specialist risk insurance in South Africa as well as Africa. Ryan joined I2 in November of 2015, and he's responsible for various aspects of the cyber insurance offering, including defining and implementing the cyber risk assessment and underwriting philosophy, development of cyber insurance underwriting models, marketing and awareness of cyber insurance, and breach response, coaching and planning. So we have the right person in the room today to talk to us about cyber risk as we finish off our session here today. I'm not going to tell you all about Ryan because he has won so many awards over the years. He is really 20 years of experience in IT security and risk management. But as I said, cats and mice, the evolution of cyber attacks, and he's going to talk about the psychology of a hacker, evolution of email attacks to BEC, ransomware evolution to full-blown cyber extortion, and new horizons, deep fakes, and then Worm GPT. What is that? I can't wait to hear about this.
Thank you so much, Christelle, and thank you everyone for your time this afternoon. I do follow a very esteemed and illustrious lineup of speakers, and I've had a very impressive introduction. I was getting excited to listen to the presentation until I realized it was me who was doing it, so hopefully I won't disappoint from that front. I'm just going to quickly bring up the presentation on my side, and then we can jump in. So let's just share sound and share there. I was faced with the interesting prospect of what do you talk about, given Wolfgang was going to talk about cyber insurance. I couldn't really talk about cyber insurance and what it is as much. Charles doing a fantastic presentation on some of the recent incidents. So this is what I came with, and let's see how it goes from there. So it's been an interesting journey being part of the cyber insurance market. I've been with Hollard and I2 as a group for almost 8 years now, part of the initial team that started up the coverage there. And if we go back this 8 years, it really was like selling ice to an Eskimo. So when you walked in and you spoke about cyber insurance, people looked at you as though you'd stepped off the moon, and this is not relevant to us. It's not going to happen to us. But over the years, we've seen how the tactics of the hackers have evolved. And if we looked into the audience that are in the session this afternoon, most will have either seen some form of cyber attack against them, know of someone who has had some form of cyber attack against them. So it's become a very real part of our lives. And the hackers have been incredibly good at finding different ways to compromise us. And then how do they go and monetize this once they've done it? Looking at cybercrime overall, if it was, and I love the stats, if it was a global economy, cybercrime would be the third largest economy in the world, behind only the US and China. Startling statistic. It is now more profitable than the global drug trade, and this really makes a lot of sense. So if you are a criminal syndicate or someone looking to earn your living out of crime, why would you want to be out on the streets running the risk of getting arrested or being shot at when you can conduct the crime from the comfort of your own home, which can be anywhere in the world, and you can target anyone or any business around the world. So it has opened up multiple new prospects for hackers to exploit. From an insurance perspective, I guess a really scary statistic, given all the unpredictability we've had with weather patterns over the last few years, is that cybercrime now costs global economies more than all of the natural disasters in a year. And that's just astronomical to think about. So what I thought would be an interesting thing to touch on is, what is the profile of a hacker? When you say hacker, I think a lot of people imagine some very nefarious individual sitting in a dark corner in a leather trench coat, sort of beavering away on their laptop, trying to hack into something. The reality, though, is very different. Met hackers of various forms, white hats, black hats, and all these sorts of things. And they are, for all intents and purposes, very ordinary, regular people. So you could very easily meet a hacker and have absolutely no idea that this is what they did as such. The stats that I've got up on the screen here are from a report that was done, which is called Inside the Mind of a Hacker. And there were various hackers who could contribute towards the study, all obviously anonymously, as they would want to do. But it paints a very interesting picture, which helps to challenge some of our regular perceptions on what a hacker looks like. So 93% of hackers are fluent in at least 2 languages. About 57% of them are between the ages of 18 and 24. And there is a little bit of a socioeconomic element, I think, that comes into this. So very often you've now got highly educated, very skilled individuals coming out of schools and varsities and finding it nigh on impossible to get that first job to start building their career from. This has seen a lot of individuals starting to move towards hacking as a way to start earning a living and possibly to kind of have their own back at the man, because if you think about it, if you've got the skill set and stuff, it shouldn't be that hard to break your way into the job market. So a little bit of revenge may be coming through from a youth which may be a bit disenfranchised, given the challenges in getting a job and challenges with the global economies all around. 54% have graduated from tertiary education, so well-educated, smart individuals. Something which I found quite startling looking through these numbers was that there's double the number of teenage hackers over the past year, and this has been attributed to it being easier than ever learning how to hack via different internet resources. Sort of in a past life, I worked in security consulting, and a lot of the tools which we utilized were either free, which you could get off of the internet, or relatively modestly priced. And you could go about watching tutorials and things like that in order to utilize these tools and effectively mimic these hacking activities. So it's not necessarily, in particular, if you're not looking at trying to sort of break into a bank or something like that, as complex as one might think. Another interesting thing to have seen from the study is for those hackers who don't hack full-time, what is it that they actually do for a living? So perhaps unsurprisingly, and I will attest to Charles is a great guy, so I'm definitely not pointing a finger at Charles in this, but 77% of hackers report working in IT or cybersecurity. Maybe makes a bit of sense. I mean, you're exposed to these things on an ongoing basis, and not pointing a finger at any business and stuff, maybe seeing how easy it is to start getting in to companies and to conduct these sorts of crimes, and it can be quite lucrative. So a really good sort of side hustle as such. What was also interesting to see is from the other 23%, just how varied it was, the different industries that these individuals worked in. I mean, things like forestry and fishing, healthcare, legal, various sorts of industries that these hackers are kind of working on a day-to-day basis. What also came out from that study, and I suppose this is very much related to the individuals who were part of that study, was that 14% of the individuals were hacking as a side hustle, about 25% part-time, and only around about 29% were hacking as their full-time sort of means of income. Serves as a good way to looking at, so why exactly are these hackers doing what they do? 24%, which I suppose is not surprising, do it for financial gain. 28% for personal development. And this could be various things like looking to create a bit of experience for yourself, looking to potentially create a bit of a name for yourself in this hacking community. There's various reasons they could be doing it for personal development. 5% something to do, 14% excitement. I mean, there is a whole sort of thrill of the chase. If you look at the number of people that can get addicted to things like Sudoku and all this sort of stuff, it is a mental challenge, and there's a lot of excitement involved in playing this cat and mouse game, trying to sort of overcome what the security barriers are and then getting your way in. I think quite often not necessarily understanding what the repercussions for a business could be once that unauthorized access has been gained. What's also interesting to look at is what are some of the insights that these hackers shared as part of the study. A big sort of drive in the utilization of artificial intelligence going forwards. And I'm not going to get into the debate at the moment of whether or not what we see with ChatGPT, and I'll talk about WormGPT later on, is AI. I think it's probably initial sort of moves in that direction. But my personal view is that we haven't yet seen real artificial intelligence in action yet. And we probably won't for a few years yet. So we're headed in that direction, but we ain't there just yet. Which is exciting in some ways because there's huge advancements we'll see coming into technology, the way we work, the way we do various things. But there is always going to be these cyber risks associated to it as well. So 78% of these hackers felt that AI will disrupt the way that they're hacking. 94% said that they plan on utilizing AI going forwards as part of their hacks. 72% felt that they didn't think AI would ever fully replicate their kind of human creativity in conducting the attack. So more something they would utilize as a tool as opposed to, I will let it go forward and do all the hacking for me. 84% felt that there were more vulnerabilities now than there were pre-pandemic. This is probably very closely aligned to what cyber insurers around the world are seeing. So we had a strong surge of ransomware attacks just as we were going into COVID. It became a very commonplace sort of attack. We then went through a little bit of a lull. We are now, however, seeing a big spike on two main forms of attacks, which I'll talk to you just now, but they are extortion, which is on the rise again. Many insurers reporting for this sort of first 6 months of the year, having seen the most notifications and claims relating to ransomware that they have ever seen in their sort of books of business. And the other big one, which Charles spoke to as well, was the business email compromises. 88% felt that a point-in-time testing is insufficient. And that makes sense because the cyber markets, your sort of cyber risk landscape and the way your business operates is constantly evolving. So if you're doing a penetration test or vulnerability once a year at this point in time, 6 months down the road, that test, while it still has some value, is very much outdated because your landscape has changed. The way your business operates its IT systems has likely seen some form of evolution. So it's important to do regular and almost continuous testing and monitoring to stay on top of what the vulnerabilities look like. And then something which I think we're starting to become a lot better at, if I'm honest, is 84%, according to the hackers, felt that less than half of companies actually understood what the true risk of being breached was to their business. I spoke to the two kind of main types of incidents that we're seeing, not just on our own book of business, but in the interactions we have with reinsurers and sort of colleagues across the globe, really, who are cyber insurers. Two big drivers of cyber insurance claims, and I suppose incidents in general, is your business, your BEC attacks, so your business email compromises, and your ransomware losses. We see that there's a lot more BEC attacks occurring, but ransomware losses tend to be a lot more expensive. I think the reasoning for this is we've seen a lot of, I suppose what you could say, less sophisticated or more hobbyist hackers transitioning away from ransomware attacks because of advancements in technology and sort of circumventing those attacks, to BEC attacks where they're now doing the social engineering and looking to break into email accounts and get people to do things which they wouldn't normally do, being a lot easier to commit and easier to monetize because you're going, change your bank account details, pay me money, thank you very much, money disappears and off I go. So big surge in business email compromises. Ransomware tending to be a little bit more sophisticated than it may have been in the past, but is back up on the rise again. So let's chat a little bit about the evolution of email attacks. And I'm sure we've all seen very simplistic, badly crafted attempts at these attacks. So this one actually wasn't even all that long ago. And one sort of questions the ethics of the individual who utilized the passing of Stephen Hawking as the premise for their cyber attack. But the whole premise behind this was Stephen Hawking has left a whole bunch of money behind. If you can answer these few questions, then you can win a share of this money. Once you then respond with the questions, they went, fantastic, you're a winner. Please, can you share these details so that we can then provide you with your money? And you'll see some relatively simplistic stuff, which will put you at ease. So your name, address, cell phone number, although address and cell phone number, you should already start be getting a little bit nervous. But then the kicker here is please provide a copy of your ID card if you have one, which is fantastic for these guys to then go and utilize to commit fraud down the road. If you read through mails like this, you'll see the language is really poor. So, you know, this is hug money, there's spelling mistakes, grammatical errors throughout. And I think by and large, we've all got very good at picking these up and going, nice try, buddy, but I ain't falling for that. Delete it and off we go. So what we've seen is these email attacks become a lot more sophisticated over the years. We've seen the language improving. We've seen the attacks become a lot more targeted. So you've seen the advent of things like whaling, which is targeted at sort of executives of the business. So they're fishing for the big fish, whaling. We've seen smishing, where they use SMSs to try and conduct phishing attacks against you. We've seen vishing, where they'll actually phone you and try and sort of get you to share data and stuff. So various forms of these attacks, which have become a lot more sophisticated and a lot more believable going forwards. I've put an Office 365 security one on here. Not the greatest crafted mail, in all honesty, but to use it just to talk to a claim which we saw, which I think highlights just how much more sophisticated these attacks have become over the years. So in this instance, we had a law firm, which was the victim. The hackers had sent one of the employees at the law firm an email looking exactly like it had come from Microsoft 365, far superior to this email you see here. To be honest, if I looked at it, I was like, it looks legit. Language was on point, branding was on point, etc. The giveaway, it had this link to then click on to go and interact with your Office 365 account. It had spoken to there being a security enhancement, which was available to be configured in the account, and said to the user, click here to log on, step through these actions and stuff like that, and you can then enable the security feature, which we highly recommend you did. Being a diligent employee, this person duly clicked on the link, went to a landing page, which looked spot on like 365. It had all the right branding. If you put the two pages next to each other, bar the domain, the web address at the top, you would have believed that were identical. Person typed in their username and password, hit submit. It then captured those details, passed them on to the legitimate Office 365 page with a failed authentication message. Person thought, oh, I must have typed in my password wrong, re-authenticated, and could actually go in and set that security feature as well. Thought nothing of it. In the background, hackers then went and they accessed the mailbox, so they had the credentials. They then created rules, one which would forward any emails received to that mailbox onto a mailbox that they owned and could manage, and a second which allowed them to send an email and have it routed from that mailbox as though it had come from the compromised mailbox. For the hackers, this was great because they now were not at mercy of having to conduct the attack before you changed your password and they didn't have access to the account anymore, or in case you enabled multi-factor authentication, which is obviously highly, highly recommended. They were in. Then they had time on their side and they could carry on, because you're also unlikely to go and check your mailbox rules and pick this up as such. Hackers were incredibly patient. In this instance, they waited about 6 months, I think, just before a big property transaction was due to go through. And the day before it went through, they sent an email to the person making the payment to go, hey, we've changed the bank account details and stuff like that. Please, can you make the payment into this account first? Now, the recipient of this mail got a mail which was coming from the right domain, looked legitimate, and for many would have been like, okay, well, I'll go ahead and pay the money into this account. Thankfully, and I think thankfully for us, it was a big amount of money they were going to pay. It was like, oh, this seems strange. We're dealing with a large firm. The timing feels off. It's a big amount of money. Let me pick up the phone and just validate this before I make the payment. At that point, it was obviously picked up what had happened, and the policy responded to investigate, see how they got access, were there any other rules created and stuff. But I think the big thing I want to leave you with is these attacks have become incredibly convincing. We've seen a massive spike in the business email compromise attacks. The whole editing of invoices and stuff is happening very often. To send something like a bank confirmation letter, to spoof one of those, super simple to do. So mail's big sort of source of attacks. To sort of further highlight this a little bit, I've got on the screen, on the left-hand side, a screenshot which talks to can it be spoofed? And I don't want to get into a technical discussion, but you've now got technology which is called DMARC. And what this does is it effectively allows you to control what is able to send emails using your domain. So, for example, if it's I2, the domain would be i2.co.za. I2, we've got DMARC implemented, so that's the screenshot on the right where you can see we've got 5 out of 5 for our DMARC configuration. And what DMARC does is you can configure these are the services and servers that are able to send emails and are approved to send emails as i2.co.za. And because it's in a global standard, whenever an email is being routed, it does a check to see, is DMARC configured for this? Yes. Is what's sending the mail part of the approved list? Yes, it is. Great, mail can pass. If not, oh, sorry, mail gets dropped and doesn't get delivered. So great technology to try and help fight against this spoofing of email domains. So what is the spoofing? Well, basically, if you don't have these sorts of technologies enabled and you're not protecting your domain, and this cannot be spoofed, is actually an online website where I could then go in and send an email as though it was coming from you. So I could go, from now is this, to mail is this, that's the subject, and off it goes, and you can send an email as though it's coming from you. Now, the chances of an attack like this being successful, if you're receiving it from the correct mail address, etc., vastly higher. So important that we implement these sorts of technologies to then subvert the advancements that the hackers have made in their attacks. And I suppose that's where some of this cat and mouse game comes in. The other big one, and the one that's given reinsurers, insurers, cybersecurity experts around the world a lot of gray hairs and a lot of sleepless nights, has been cyber extortion. Extortion has evolved and grown up a lot over the years. So where do we come from? We come from simple emails like I showed you a little earlier on, where hackers were trying to get you to click on a link to a malicious website or open an attachment that had malicious content in it. This would then kick off and it would start running on your laptop and start encrypting everything. And then it would look to see, are you connected to other systems via your network drives? Can I start encrypting all of these things as well? Quite often it would be picked up by the person whose machine and kicks it off because you're there working on it at the time. Disconnected from the network, and you kind of start halting the attack in its footsteps. The impact, we normally have maybe a handful of devices that were compromised, and you had the call of either reinstall these ones and start from scratch, or if there was sensitive data loss and you didn't have it backed up anywhere else, maybe look to pay the ransom, which back in the day was in the region of about $300. And I'm going back probably about 7 years here. So relatively simplistic attacks, not devastating to businesses, and they could recover from them quite easily. The knock-on effect of this for hackers is, yes, they were making a little bit of money, but they weren't really setting the world alight. They weren't buying villas in the Bahamas in order for them to conduct their attacks from. So they transitioned to, probably about 5 years ago already now. Actually, it's not that hard to break into a business through things like missing patches or simple passwords, which Charles spoken to. So why don't we break in, look at what this sort of landscape of this company looks like, and then what we'll do is we'll look to encrypt as much of this environment as we can when it's not necessarily being monitored quite as closely. So as was our experience, this was typically early hours of a Sunday morning. The goal of the hackers being, when you came into the office on a Monday, everything is encrypted. You've got your, hey, your environment's been compromised, it's been encrypted message, please pay Bitcoin or some form of crypto into the following wallet. The big sort of win for the hackers was, if I could encrypt your backups as well, and if we go back 5 odd years or so, many companies had their backups connected to their network because it's just easier that way. Hackers encrypted that as well. They now knew that you had nothing to recover from. You're a lot more likely to have to pay that ransom in order to get your business back up and running. The implications, large portions of the environment impacted, possibly no backups to recover from. And depending on the size and notoriety of the business, and if the backups had been encrypted, we start to see the ransom demands into the millions of rands. Just for interest, for those of you who haven't seen it, this is an actual ransom demand screen. This is one we actually had quite recently. So this was an incident within the last month or so. So not really a message or a screen that you want to see ever, never mind on a regular basis. So where are we now? What we've seen is I'm not sure who I should refer to as the cats and the mice here. But what we've seen is the cybersecurity market starting to respond to the scourge that was ransomware with the encryption of the data. And you started to get your what they're called next generation antivirus or endpoint protection, which became very important, especially as staff were working hybridly. So the laptops and stuff were now no longer behind the firewall. They were actually kind of directly connected to the internet. So they needed to up the game of the security on these and utilize things like heuristics and behavioral detection to improve how laptops were determining something that was going awry. So your modern sort of endpoint protection, and as Charles said, rather don't download a free one, actually pay the money to get a really good endpoint protection. Because what the good ones are doing nowadays is they're running on your laptop or your device, and they're monitoring all the processes and looking for behavior that could be malicious. So, for example, why is this process opening files and closing them very quickly? This could be ransomware that is opening file, encrypting, closing it, opening file, encrypting, closing it. So it'll stop that process at that point and quarantine it. So proactively is monitoring processes and shutting down a potential attack right there. This made it a little bit harder for hackers to conduct their attacks. One of the other sort of big advancements, I think, which drove the change in tactic from hackers was the sort of ransomware protected backups. So you very commonly now have, you've got to love cybersecurity with all its acronyms, what they call a worm backup solution. So worm stands for write once, read many. So you'll write your backup if it's connected to your network still, but it can only be written once. And then you can read from it as much as you want, but you can't overwrite it. So hackers can't go and encrypt that because they can't write it over. Or you have disconnected backups, either in cloud or in a disconnected, if you go simple, disconnected memory stick or external hard drive. So guys went, okay, so you want to encrypt my data, I'll find a way that I've always got a backup copy that I can then revert to. I'm not paying you your ransom. So what was very profitable and lucrative for hackers started to become a little bit more challenging and started to dry up a little bit. With these advancements, that's why I think we've seen a lot of hackers going to BEC. But what we also started to see was some hackers going, okay, no problem. What we'll do is we'll still break into your company, but we're going to steal the data before we run any encryption, if we actually even encrypt your environment anymore, knowing that you probably have a backup. And I would say that in probably 30% of the instances we see nowadays, the hackers aren't even bothering to encrypt the data anymore. They know that for a company, the big scary thing is, we've got all your data, pay us, or we are going to out you publicly, and we're going to publish all of this client data. Deal with the reputational backlash of this, deal with the loss of customer and client, customer, business, supply, and partner confidence, and hey, have fun with your regulator as well while you're at it. This becomes a big motivator to have to look at paying these ransoms. And this is what we've seen for the best part of the last 3 or 4 years, is hackers still looking to break in, but not just encrypting the data, stealing the data at first and holding you to a double or a triple or a quadruple ransom demand, knowing that you've got the reputational risk, the data being exposed, etc. Maybe to quickly touch on what is a double and a triple and a quadruple ransom demand. So normal ransom demand was, oh, we've got your data, pay us and we'll be encrypted. Double ransom demand is there's now 2 components to it. So part 1, pay us to get to not publish the data. Part 2, pay us to get the keys to decrypt it. The triple, what we've seen is where the hackers have actually started to work through the data, and they're then starting to communicate with those whose data sets it was. We actually saw a great instance of that in the South African market when we had the TransUnion hack about 2 years ago. So part 1, TransUnion got the demand, pay us to get the key to decrypt the data. Part 2, pay us not to publish it. Part 3, they worked through, and as you can imagine, a lot of businesses, including financial institutions, etc., utilized TransUnion to do credit checks. So they were then contacting, for example, an insurer saying, we know that a large portion of this data is your client data. If TransUnion don't pay us, and their ransom demand was in excess of 200 million rand, pay us the money and we won't publish the data. We won't publish the data relating to your client base. So that was the triple part of that extortion demand. The demands also varying on size and notoriety into the millions. We've seen often into tens of millions. From a South African market perspective, there have been a number of demands into the hundreds of millions, and I'm aware of tens of millions ransoms having been paid. Adding just a few more stats to that. So this is from Unit 42's ransomware threat report. I think two key things just to touch on this was what they see as the median demand and payment. So median demand about $650,000, median payment about $350,000, very closely mimics numbers that from a South African perspective. You are able to download or to negotiate those payments down. I think there's a psychology in that. So if I come to you with a 50 million rand ransom demand and you can negotiate me down to 10 or whatever the case may be, I feel like I've won to a degree, and you're probably still getting the money that you're looking for in the first place. The other big thing that hackers have got great at doing is putting pressure on you to pay the ransom. So we've seen instances where the hackers have gone directly to the press because they felt they weren't getting enough of a response, where they started phoning executives in the early hours of the morning and stuff to actually put pressure on them. So let's get into the exciting stuff. That's where we've been. Where are we going next? Artificial intelligence, early days still. Huge opportunity to revolutionize the way we do many, many things. As I said, there is, however, a risk with that. So if we look at generative AI, I spoke a little bit about Worm GPT. Sounds scary and all these sorts of things. Effectively, what it is a variation on a ChatGPT, but with more nefarious capabilities. So if you look at something like ChatGPT, there are a number of safeguards that have been built into it. So if you went to ChatGPT and said, please write me a piece of ransomware, it's going to go, no, sorry, not going to do that. Worm GPT been developed not to have these sorts of safeguards, and actually it is well geared in allowing you to request these sorts of things. So it might be a little bit small on your screens, but on the screen on the left, you'll see it's actually, the request is, write me a Python malware that grabs a computer's username, external IP address, Google Chrome cookies, and zip everything, and then send it onto a different webhook. Worm GPT is then gone, and it's written the code around this. So effectively, Worm GPT is ChatGPT for hackers. It's a tool which they can utilize to create various forms of ransomware, to craft phishing emails, all of these sorts of things. And I guess what's also interesting to see how much it costs. So a monthly subscription for Worm GPT, 100 euros a month, a yearly subscription, 550 euros. Obviously, from a South African perspective, a lot more expensive now than it may have been a year or two ago. But still, if this is your livelihood and how you're making money, your return on investment on it probably wouldn't be all that bad. What are some of the other ways that hackers are utilizing generative AI? So we touched on building more sophisticated malware, being able to utilize these generative AI tools to test their malware. Sabotaging machine learning. So I spoke a little bit about the advancements in endpoint protection. So you've got a lot of AI starting to come into your security solutions, trying to detect malicious behavior. Hackers are now starting to use AI to overwhelm these threat detection capabilities with a number of false positives. So, oh, I think this could be an issue. Oh, okay, it's not. I think this could be an issue. Oh, it's not. Overwhelming that and then sneaking an attack through past that. Generating of deepfakes. I'm sure we've all seen some deepfake images and things like that. So these are effectively convincing imitations of humans using writing, speech, images, etc., and is effectively geared at deception for fraud, including identity theft, financial fraud, disinformation. You know that, for example, some of the banks are looking at voice recognition for authentication. As this technology improves, could that be used to circumvent these sorts of authentication mechanisms? Phishing emails, we spoke about BEC earlier on. So very often the hackers are now utilizing tools. So I'll break into your mailbox, for example. I will then utilize a tool which will use AI or generative AI. It will scan through, see who do you communicate with regularly. What is the typical tone of voice you utilize with this person? Is there like a nickname that you address them by? How do you normally sign off your emails? And it will then use those insights to custom draft emails, which will be a lot more believable to the recipient because it's addressing me the way that you would normally do so. It's signing the email off. It's using the same tone that you normally would. So it's just that much more believable. So these sorts of tools are now being utilized to further improve these mail attacks to make them even more believable. And then cracking captchas and brute force passwords. So in particular, looking at the passwords, what you can now do as a hacker is you've got tools that will say, right, we've got this individual that we're targeting. It will go and scour your social media accounts, all your various profiles, build up a bit of a profile about you, and using these insights, start to guess what is the most likely password combinations you'd use. So, you know, if it picks up, oh, look, I had a dog called Fluffy, oh, maybe Fluffy is going to be part of your password, or whatever the case may be. So just upping the game for individuals. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass over quickly to one of my colleagues just to quickly tell you a little bit more about deepfakes.
Deepfakes, the digital doppelgangers that blur reality. These convincing videos and images are created using advanced AI, replacing faces and voices. But beneath their entertainment value lie grave cyber risks. From misinformation campaigns to identity theft, deepfakes can deceive, manipulate, and compromise trust. In the wrong hands, they pose a threat to individuals, organizations, and society itself. Stay vigilant.
Okay, so not totally believable, but this is a video that I utilized absolutely free tools to generate. In fact, I think I paid $1 to do a synthesizing of the voice. The script was written using ChatGPT, took a snippet of my voice, utilized another tool to create a voice profile, which could then read out that ChatGPT script, and then a third tool, which then created the mouth movements. It's early days in this technology. It will evolve very, very rapidly, but you can already start to see how this is starting to become dangerous, because I can messages being sent by various people, etc. So early doors, but something to be wary of going forwards.
Deepfakes.
Sorry, just as a quick wrap up, as you can see, it is a war out there. So as we see the cybersecurity community making great advancements to circumvent cyber attacks, attackers find a new way to go forward. So that's this ongoing cat and mouse game, trying to sort of establish dominance. Technology advancements are fantastic, but they can be utilized on both sides for good and not necessarily quite as good. No security is invaluable. The damages to a business can be hugely significant, and it's important to ensure that you've got this sort of response process. As Charles said earlier, the likelihood is that you're going to be compromised at some point. So it makes sense with that knowledge to ensure that you've got the ability to respond and minimize the damages as effectively as you can. Thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. So if you leave today's session with any doubts about where to go, who to ask, or to get more information about cyber risk exposure and how to manage these risks, I would be surprised. So remember, if you go onto the InsureTalk website, you will be able to find today's session, to go and find more information, re-watch some of the inserts that we had. You can also reach out to the individuals who were on our show today and make contact with the likes of I2, who are specialist underwriters in the risk of cyber. So thanks for joining us. But before you go, I want to just remind you, we've got the InsureTalk live session at the end of October. We still have seats available. And I just want to say this. A lot of people in the room said, we want to network in person. You know, we don't like this online thing. We're back to normal. We've created the opportunity now for you to join us in person. So join us. There's still some seats available. For those of you who are joining us virtually, because it's Joburg, not all of us can get to Joburg, you will still get your CPD points. You will still be able to join free of charge. Of course, if you join in person, you will also get your CPD points. But come, join us. Next time we're there in person, we can get to see some of the faces and some of the people who've been on InsureTalk from day one and who've joined every single session. We'd love to meet you and network with you in person. So the next time I see you, it'll be in person, and we can't wait. Thanks for joining today. That's over and out from us.
CN&CO Events proudly brings you InsureTalk Live 2023. The time has come to close your laptop and join us live. Network with industry leaders and influencers. Engage and learn from A-list speakers. Interact with top exhibitors. Experience the best live entertainment. And so much more. Register today. Visit cnandcoevents.com. InsureTalk Live 2023, shaping the future together. Register today.